owner of the US Mega Farm. Este video es puramente para entretenimiento y no infringe derechos de autor en los derechos de la novela y la imagen son del autor original. No reclamamos propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora. Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 901 Tragic Betty. Regardless of how Zumangia was struggling here, Kinzu had already made up his mind to punish this little girl who collaborated with the enemy. So, in this bright and sunny March, in this luxurious villa by the sea, a man who represented justice severely punished a woman. 100 times, 100 times. With a sigh, when Kinzu supported his somewhat weak old waist and slowly walked out of the villa, the sun had already set in the west. After lying down under the porch, Kinzu closed his eyes and rested for a while, and then turned his attention to Cheese. As expected, the few little guys who were punished by him to be self-reliant did not walk far after a day, and kept playing in the woods and pastures near the villa. When they were thirsty, they went to the vegetable garden to steal some fresh vegetables to replenish their water. When they were hungry, they continued to gnaw on the big piece of beef that they had not finished in the morning. Anyway, they were determined and would not move forward no matter what. Nonsense, who would be willing to work hard to hunt when there are delicious food and drinks to serve? However, when they returned to the place where the beef was placed again, they were a little dumbfounded. Betty, the brown bear who always had the most bad temper, was the first to lose his temper. He looked at the beef on the ground and roared. Who the hell took my beef? Compared with Betty's irritability, Dahu and Xiao were much more practical. They rushed forward and licked the beef on the ground clean. Woof woof woof, ignoring his embarrassing little friend, Dahu made a few puzzled roars, lowered his head and began to sniff the ground. Woof woof woof. Soon, as if he had discovered something, Dahu turned around and roared a few times, then took the lead and ran out. Hearing Dahu's roar, Betty became energetic and jumped over, roaring while running. It seemed that if the guy who stole his dinner dared to appear in front of it, it would pounce on him and bite him to death. Following the smell, Dahu and Xiao were in front, Dahu and Xiao were behind, and Betty stood up on her two short legs. The little guys rushed forward aggressively. Looking at everything in front of him, Kinzu was very happy, and the big snake mouth couldn't help but split open on both sides. As if afraid that the little guys couldn't find him, Kinzu thought for a while and took the initiative to stick out the huge snake head. Crunch, Kinzu seemed to hear the rapid break sound. When he came to his senses, he found that the little guys were standing in front of him, not daring to move. Gong, I don't know who took the lead, including Dahu. The little guys swallowed their saliva. Kinzu stared at them with his eyes as big as copper bells, and didn't say anything, just staring at them. Although he couldn't show it on his face, Kinzu was already very happy in his heart. A few little bastards, aren't you very arrogant? Won't you take revenge? Come on, let me show you how I'll deal with you today. Woof woof woof. After a brief moment of shock, Dahu recognized that big guy who suddenly appeared in front of him. Since they were from the same family, Dahu was not so scared. He whimpered and said hello, but his feet had already begun to retreat tentatively. Kinzu didn't say anything nonsense when he saw this. His big tail drew a slight arc in the air and directly surrounded the little guys in the middle. Betty, who had screamed the most fiercely just now, was stimulated by this. Her big eyes rolled up, she whimpered a few times, and she fainted. His body suddenly stiffened. Kinzu looked at Betty who fainted on the ground. It was as if there were 10,000 beasts galloping in his heart. It was so uncomfortable. You really wasted this good figure. He gently tapped Betty's little head with his big tail, shook his head, and decided to let these poor little guys go. After ordering Cheese to act on his own, Kinzu collected his thoughts and thought about Betty who fainted over there. He couldn't help but feel a little worried. I don't know if these guys will leave it there by itself. Scratching his head, Kinzu stood up and decided to look for them. If nothing else, just as he said at the beginning, as long as you went to the gate of his kin family, you're a member of his kin family. Apart from normal birth, aging, illness and death, he will never abandon anyone. Well, if you think about it this way, the initiation ceremony held by his sister a few days ago seems to have some meaning, right? Thinking wildly, Kinzu came to the stable, led out Xiaobai, who he hadn't ridden for a long time, and prepared to look for those guys. Of course, this does not mean that Kinzu let them go, otherwise he would not have ridden there on horseback. The reason why he didn't drive but rode a horse was because Kinzu didn't intend to let them go, and was ready to let them run a few more laps behind him. Woof woof woof. Kinzu, who was just about to get on the horse, seemed to hear a few low dog barks. Did those guys come back by themselves? Kinzu's face turned ugly when he thought that Betty couldn't wake up so quickly. Although he didn't educate her much, he still hoped that these pets in his home could unite and help each other. Apart from anything else, abandoning their companions must never happen. I hope it's not like what I thought. Kinzu muttered to himself, then he got on the horse and drove the somewhat excited Xiaobai to gallop in the direction where the sound came from. Shilulu, with a long neigh, Xiaobai raised his front hooves high, then put them down heavily, leaving a shallow dent on the muddy ground, and then quickly moved towards the next target. Feeling the excitement of Xiaobai under his crotch, Kinzu's heart gradually calmed down. He smiled and stroked the snow-white mane, saying, "Since you want to run, then run." As soon as the voice fell, Xiaobai, who was still a little reluctant to let go, instantly accelerated and almost took a step 5 or 6 meters away. "Damn, you guy, I told you to run but you didn't run so fast." Kinzu was caught off guard and hugged Xiaobai's horse head tightly in a hurry, which prevented him from falling off. Sigh, Xiaobai shook his tail in disappointment, lowered his horse's head, and began to walk forward slowly. Okay, I'll take you for a good run after I find some little guys." Shaking his head helplessly, Kinzu gently stroked Xiaobai's messy mane, feeling a little uncomfortable. "It's been a long time since I brought this guy back, but I haven't really run it well. A good horse should not be locked up in a stable for the rest of its life. That would be a pity for it and its owner." Chapter 902. Smart little guys. The light golden sunset reflected in the green pasture, with an intoxicating beauty. Facing the light salty sea breeze, Kinzu, riding on his horse, quickly moved towards the direction where the sound came from. Woof, or woo, the closer he got, the louder the sound became. However, what made Kinzu a little strange was that Daha's cry was a little strange, not as crisp as before. It seemed that he was holding something in his mouth. With a surprised nasal sound, Kinzu gently hit the reins, and Xiaobai understood and accelerated. After crossing a slope and crossing several unusually dense pastures, Kinzu finally saw the situation in front of him clearly. However, the scene in front of him made him a little stunned. A dog and a tiger, actually carrying a stretcher. Oh, no, that can't be said. He shook his head suddenly, looking at Daha and Daha walking side by side in front of him with a branch in their mouths in the dense pasture. Kinzu felt relieved. Finally, your little guys have not forgotten your roots and know not to abandon your companions. Because lying on that branch that Daha and Daha were dragging was Betty, the brown bear who was frightened by cheese. Woof woof woof, seeing Kinzu appear in front of him, Daha excitedly let go of the branch in his mouth and pounced on him. He really knew he was wrong. Because he was very hungry now. It had been several hours since lunchtime, and he was already a little hungry after playing crazy all afternoon. Now, coupled with dragging that stupid bear for so long, poor Daha's little belly was almost sticking together. "Little guy, do you know you were wrong?" Kinzu picked up the somewhat excited Daha and smiled, looking very kind. But it was this kind smile that scared Daha so much that he nodded repeatedly, indicating that he knew he was wrong. Until now, he still remembered that the owner drove them out to hunt with such a smile. "Okay, that's all for today, let's all go home." With a wave of his hand, Kinzu bent down and carried Betty, who was lying unconscious on the branch, onto the horse's back. Sigh, Xiaobai snorted in dissatisfaction. He felt very uncomfortable with Kinzu putting such a timid guy on his back. But due to Kinzu's usual prestige and the obedience effect brought by the spiritual liquid, the always proud Akultik horse silently endured this feeling. Soon, under the leadership of Xiaobai, 1 man and 4 dogs returned to the villa. Yes, 4 dogs, that's right. After arriving home, the 4 little guys, including Dahu and Xiao, were all exhausted. "You useless guys, with your current level, you dare to resist? Dare to be dissatisfied?" Arriving at the villa, sitting under the porch, looking at the few little guys lying limply in front of him, Kinzu once again started the chattering mode. Just as Kinzu was getting into the groove and preparing to give the little guys a political lesson from beginning to end, Betty, who had been forgotten by him, slowly woke up. "Hey, you're awake." Hearing the voice, Kinzu turned around and, with the help of the afterglow of the setting sun, smiled brightly at Betty, who had just stood up not far away. Betty, who had just gotten up, turned around and happened to bump into Kinzu's frightening smile, and simply fainted again with her. Fuck. Seeing this, Kinzu cursed in a low voice with some helplessness. Although he felt helpless in his heart, he did not dare to delay, so he had to let these little guys go for the time being and prepare to go see Betty first. Fainting once may be a physical problem, but when it fainted for the second and third time, Kinzu became a little worried. Fortunately, although he did not know much about veterinary medicine, Kinzu could still feel Betty's weak heartbeat. However, just when Kinzu breathed a sigh of relief, he found that the little guy's heartbeat was slowly returning to normal, and it was getting slower and slower, slower and slower. Fuck, I'm not going to scare you to death, am I? Kinzu said he was a little confused about this sudden situation. Is he really that scary? No, is he really that scary? Although his mind was a little confused for a while, Kinzu's hands did not hesitate at all. He opened the system, exchanged the spiritual liquid, and then dripped the drop of spiritual liquid emitting a bright halo to Betty's mouth. Gong! Betty didn't move yet, but the little guys watching next to her had already swallowed their saliva. At this moment, how much they hoped that the guy who fainted was them. Gong! Another sound of swallowing saliva came, and Kinzu looked down. Although Betty's eyes were not open, her big mouth opened subconsciously. It seemed that at this moment, it was waiting for the mysterious moonlight essence to favor it. Shaking his head, Kinzu did not hesitate any longer and directly sent the drop of spiritual liquid into Betty's bloody mouth, which was almost as big as its head. The effect was immediate. As soon as the spiritual liquid entered her stomach, Betty opened her confused little eyes. Oh, a loud and powerful roar of a bear suddenly resounded in front of the villa, causing Kinzu, who had just smiled, to frown. Behave yourself. A slap was directly slapped on the little guy's round head. Kinzu said unhappily, if you keep yelling, I will be ruined, believe it or not. Betty was dazed for a while when she was slapped on the head by Kinzu just after waking up. She stood there blankly and did not react to Kinzu's words. Didn't you get beaten, stupid? Seeing that Betty didn't move, Kinzu became a little worried. He stretched out his hand to pull the little guy's round little ears and tentatively said, Come, Betty, there is beef over there. In just a moment, Kinzu found that the little guy's eyes became bright, and he turned his head to stare at him without blinking, and there seemed to be some saliva overflowing from the corners of his mouth. You fooded, look at others, who is as good as you? Pointing to the little guys next to him, Kinzu was about to say who is as good as you, but he found that Daha and Jahu had come to him, imitating Betty's behavior, staring at him with their big eyes without blinking. Okay, you win. Wiping the cold sweat from his forehead, Kinzu turned and walked into the original villa. In their expectant eyes, he walked out with a large plate of freshly cut beef. Chapter 903 Unexpected Visitor. Accompanied by a loud crowing of a rooster, a ray of light gradually rose on the sea level in the distance, and the fiery red sun slowly rose. The crystal tears on the green grass were slowly influenced by the smiling face full of vitality, and finally returned to the endless air. Husband, you really let them go. On the soft big bed in the bedroom, Zumengyo half leaned in Kinzu's arms, and said with some worry, I don't know what scared Betty to faint yesterday. If it weren't for the little guys being sensible, you probably wouldn't have seen it. It's better not to see it. It would be better if he didn't mention it. When he mentioned this, Kinzu couldn't help but roll his eyes. As a brown bear, it's not even as good as 2 huskies. Is it still worthy of being a bear? Poochie, looking at Kinzu's somewhat exasperated look, Zumengyo couldn't help but laugh. However, in order to plead for the poor little guy, Zumengyo still held back her smile and persuaded him with a little coquettishness. Hubby, isn't he still young? Besides, don't you see whose husky it is? How can it be compared with ordinary huskies? Yeah, that's true. Speaking of his own husky, Kinzu couldn't help but nodded with some pride. Well, although this guy is a little naughty sometimes, he knows his mistakes and can correct them. They are all good children. Moreover, just thinking about the younger brothers of his husky, Kinzu felt a wave of pride in his heart. Jaguar, brown bear, which one is not a hickman when taken out alone? But now. Just a little follower. Then, husband, don't let them go. Well? No. Kinzu, immersed in pride, almost agreed without thinking, but fortunately he reacted in time and shook his head again and again. You, humph. After glaring at Kinzu, Zumengyo sat up, ignoring her exposed beauty, and said coquettishly, You don't know how to feel sorry, they are still so young, what if something happens? This, seeing that Zumengyo seemed to be defending the little guys, Kinzu hurriedly persuaded, Wife, don't worry, didn't I let the white tiger follow them? I guarantee that nothing will happen to them. Really? Zhu Mengyo looked at Qin Zhu with some suspicion. Absolutely true. Qin Zhu almost swore an oath after patting his chest with his hand. Then what happened yesterday? Zhu Mengyo's words directly choked Qin Zhu and made him speechless. He couldn't say that it was because of his prank that he deliberately went out to scare them, right? Look, you said it was absolutely safe. Zhu Mengyo curled her lips and frowned in dissatisfaction. If Daha and Dahu hadn't been sensible, I'll bet he might have been eaten by some beast. How could that be? Qin Zhu laughed twice, touched his nose, and didn't know how to respond. Of course not, I just don't let them go alone. Seeing that Qin Zhu was still trying to quibble, Zhu Mengyo snorted and started to act like a little bitch. Now, Qin Zhu had a headache. Although he could let the little guys go up the mountain now regardless of the consequences. But in this case, he would have a hard time passing the test of the beautiful Lady Zhu. It seems that it is not worth offending his wife for the sake of a few little guys. Forget it. Qin Zhu sighed lazily and finally decided to let the little guys go. After all, his wife is the most important. Since he was not going, Qin Zhu was about to lie back in bed to catch up on his sleep when the phone next to him suddenly rang. Hi, Qin, my dear friend, how are you? As soon as Qin Zhu picked up the phone, he heard a somewhat awkward, but very familiar Chinese language coming from the other end. Your Highness Ben Carter? Qin Zhu sat up straight and asked uncertainly. Ha, how about it? Did I win? There was a noisy laugh from the other end of the phone, and then Ben Carter's voice came over. Ha, Qin, my dearest friend, I knew you would be able to recognize my voice. Touching his chin speechlessly, Qin Zhu asked with a wry smile. Your Highness, what are you doing? Qin, don't be so polite, just call me Ben Carter. Ben Carter first corrected Qin Zhu's address, then said with a smile. I'm with Prince Hunter and a few friends now. They said they want to go to your ranch to play for a while. Do you welcome them? Hectares, of course you are welcome. I will treat them as a guest. Sitting up, Qin Zhu signaled Zhu Mengyo beside him to keep quiet, and asked with a smile. I wonder when you will come over so that I can make preparations in advance? No, Ben Carter waved his hand on the other end of the phone and said with a smile. We are near your house, so there is nothing to prepare. That's not right. Having said that, Ben Carter looked at the people behind him, and said with a smile. Well, Qin, you just need to prepare a horse for each of us. What, nearby? Qin Zhu was really anxious now. Are you kidding me? I haven't even gotten up yet, and you said you will come in. Don't you princes and princesses like that sleep in? Yeah, what's wrong? Ben Carter was puzzled by Qin Zhu's excited tone, and asked tentatively. Qin, is it inconvenient for you today? If so, it's okay, let's get together next time. Although he said so, Ben Carter's tone was obviously different. Apart from that accident, he and Qin Zhu didn't have much friendship. Although Qin Zhu saved his life, there were many bodyguards who saved his life. If it wasn't for Hunter's face, this prince from the Arab world would not have made such a friend with Qin Zhu. It's convenient, of course it's convenient. Although he didn't know Ben Carter's mood, Qin Zhu didn't act too pretentiously. He smiled and said, I'm just surprised that you got up so early. You know, I'm still in bed. Oh, so that's it. Hearing this, Ben Carter's face broke into a smile again. He looked around and said in a low voice with a cunning smile. Qin, you don't know this. These guys all came with their elders, and they dare not do anything reckless. They are alone and can't sleep. What are they going to do if they don't get up? That's it. Qin Zhu wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and it suddenly dawned on him. He was saying, why are these guys so honest this time? Chapter 904. Henpeckchard. Before Ben Carter and his men arrived at the manor, Qin Zhu was finally half dragged and half pulled up by Zhu Mengyo. Husband, go wash up quickly, we're almost there. The Dashivala Zhu pushed Qin Zhu into the bathroom, and muttered angrily. These guys are really, why do they come so early? Don't they know that disturbing people sleep? Yeah, I think so too. Shrugging his shoulders, Qin Zhu tidied up his clothes, brushed his teeth, and replied with a smile. But who lets him be a prince, and we're ordinary people? TSK, what prince, just a mover rich eh? Zhu pouted her lips, and she didn't like those princes from Arabia who were running around the world with money all day long. Slap. Oh, husband, what are you doing again? Unprepared, Zhu Mengyo's perky little butt was slapped again. What's wrong with mover rich eh? I think mover rich eh are pretty good. Picking up the towel and wiping the water droplets on his face as if nothing had happened, Kinzu hummed in dissatisfaction. Muvalauriche not only have no worries about food and clothing, but can also travel everywhere. How many people want to become Muvalauriche but don't have the opportunity? Hehe, good, Muvalauriche are the best. Looking at Kinzu's somewhat childish expression, the beautiful ladies you couldn't help but chuckle. When the two of them finished packing and went downstairs, they found that the little guys were still sleeping soundly in the quilt. Husband, look at them, they are so tired, they are still sleeping now. Seeing this scene, the beautiful lady's first reaction was distress. But Kinzu had a very different view on this. Tired? I think they are just lazy. Kinzu pouted and pointed at the little Alaskans that came to his feet. He said unhappily, look at these little guys. They got up so early, but they're still sleeping. Zumengyo rolled her eyes helplessly. She didn't expect that her unintentional words would turn the battlefield into a few little guys. Just at this time, there was a dull roar of the engine outside, so she said, okay, husband, go and see if they're here. So fast? She raised her wrist to check the time. Only more than 20 minutes had passed. Are they so efficient? Boss, the guests are here. Kinzu was still thinking, but Dale had already pushed open the door and walked in. How many are here? Kinzu came back to his senses, tidied his clothes again, and walked out with Zumengyo. 3 princes, 2 princesses, and 5 bodyguards. As they spoke, they had already walked out of the villa, and Kinzu also saw the row of luxurious and domineering cars parked outside. Ha, Ben Carter, long time no see, you're getting stronger and stronger. After giving a warm hug to Prince Ben Carter, who was coming towards him in a white robe and a white towel on his head, Kinzu said with a smile, I thought I was fast enough, but I didn't expect you to be faster. Of course. Patting his chest, Ben Carter made a special courtesy to greet Zumengyo beside him, and replied with a smile, we were not far from Boston. If they hadn't insisted on having breakfast before coming, we would have arrived an hour ago. That's your fault. Before Ben Carter finished speaking, Kinzu smiled and teased, don't you know that we Chinese are very hospitable? You came here and had dinner in advance. You're not giving me a chance to show my ability. No, Clean, I think you misunderstood. Before Ben Carter could speak, a voice that Kinzu was very familiar with came from the side. The reason why we ate something before coming here is to have the energy to eat more, right? Under Kinzu's astonished gaze, Judd, who was wearing a neat black suit, a plaid tie, and leather shoes that could be used as a mirror, walked out from the back of the crowd. Hey, Judd, why are you here too? Looking at Judd, who came forward with some surprise, Kin smiled and hugged him. Why not? Shrugging his shoulders, Judd showed a very bright smile and teased, don't you welcome His Royal Highness to come here, but don't welcome me, an unknown person. Nobody. Listening to the idioms that came out of Judd's mouth, Kinzu pointed at him with some amusement. If the son-in-law of the great American president is still an unknown person, then we all don't need to live anymore. Listening to Kinzu's words, the people around him also showed a knowing smile. That's true. If it weren't for this identity, it would be very difficult for a son of a real estate developer to join their circle. Of course, Kinzu is an exception. After all, he is the common savior and friend of Prince Hunter and Prince Ben Carter. Well, I can't argue with you. Judd was a bachelor. Seeing that he was at a disadvantage, he simply admitted his defeat. He didn't believe that Kinzu would continue to make fun of him even after he was in this situation. However, he did guess right. Kinzu would not take the initiative to make fun of a guest. So, after seeing Judd admit his defeat, Kinzu smiled and changed the subject again. Judd, you haven't said it yet, why do you have the leisure to run to my remote place to hang out? Don't you need to accompany your beautiful wife who is as beautiful as a flower? Hey, Clean, can we change the subject again? Judd, who was a little relaxed because Kinzu took the initiative to change the subject, couldn't help but cover his forehead in pain after hearing Kinzu's words. It is said that you should not hit someone in the face, but you, this guy, specifically hit him in the vitals. Although Judd was in great pain, Kinzu was a little puzzled and couldn't help but whisper to Ben Carter beside him. Hey, man, did I say something wrong? Of course, Ben Carter suppressed his smile and explained quietly. Clean, Judd's wife is a very strong queen-level figure. She bullies him a lot at home, so this guy can't hide from her now. Oh, okay. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu sighed helplessly. The greatest sorrow of a man is nothing more than this, right? Who says it's not? Before Benkaza could speak, Judd, who was covering his head, suddenly came over and scratched his hair in pain. Clean, you don't know how terrible it is when a woman is unreasonable. Glancing at Zumengyo beside him, Kinzu held Judd's hands with eager eyes. No, bro, I know. Chapter 905 Preparation. After a brief greeting, Kinzu welcomed several people into the villa. After the host and guest sat down, he asked with a smile, "Guys, it's getting late now. What are your plans for today? Don't you know an old saying in your country?" Shrugging his shoulders, Benkaza smiled and pulled out an idiom. The guest follows the host's wishes. Okay. Touching his nose, Kinzu thought for a while, and then smiled and said, "You came all the way here just to hunt in the Appalachian Mountains. In this case, let's pack up and set off." "Ha, Clean, Hunter is right, you're really a smart guy." Benkaza stood up with a smile, pointed at the guys next to him, and said helplessly, "I didn't want to come, but these guys insisted on coming, and I had no choice but to come and find you to go in together." Now Benkaza himself doesn't dare to go into the Appalachian Mountains again. No, it should be said that he doesn't dare to go out hunting at all now. There is no way, it's really too weird that happened. Afterwards, he also checked the nearby surveillance records. It was obvious that he was thousands of miles away in the morning, but ran to Kinzu's house in the afternoon. Okay then. Looking at the three royal family members including Judd, Kinzu pondered for a moment and asked, "Your Highness Richard, when do you think we should set off?" The man Kinzu called Richard was a man dressed very similar to Benkaza. However, unlike Benkaza's only tuft of mustache, Richard's face was covered with thick beards, black and long, and he looked as if he was possessed by Mr. Ha, Clean, of course we will follow your arrangements. After all, you are the owner here. Although he looked a little scary, Richard's performance surprised Kinzu. Not only was his speech and behavior polite, but even his voice was very peaceful. In that case, Kinzu looked around, especially at his pets who were not doing well, nodded with a smile, and said, "Since everyone has no objection, let's get ready and set off immediately, and try to have lunch in the mountains." Richard and the others looked at each other, nodded at the same time, and responded with a smile. "Husband, are you going into the mountains?" When Benkaza and the others went back to the car to prepare things, Zumengyo, who was accompanying them with a smile, came up at this time. "Yes." Nodding and stretching, Kinzu smiled and said, "You also saw that they came from a far distance, we can't not take them to play, right?" "Humph, tell the truth, are you up to something bad again?" Seeing Kinzu's eyes glancing to the side, Zumengyo immediately became alert and reached out her delicate hand to touch the soft flesh on his waist. It seemed that as long as Kinzu's answer did not satisfy the beautiful Zhu, he would suffer today. But imagination is always beautiful, but reality is usually skinny. "Ah, what are you doing? Let me go." "Hey, what do you say?" "Don't, it's itchy." Giggle. Zumengyo laughed twice and wanted to pull her hand back, but she couldn't do it. The little guys who were sleeping beside were awakened by the laughter that was sometimes high and sometimes low. They looked around with their little eyes full of doubt. It doesn't matter if they don't look around. After a look, the little guys immediately shrank back. At this moment, they wished that time would stop and that the bad master outside would never notice them again. Especially Betty, thinking about the nightmare experience yesterday, she had the urge to cry. "Isn't I just a little bigger, a little less courageous, and a little more meat on my body? As for catching me..." Although the little guys were very careful, they were still noticed by Kinzu, who was paying attention to this place. Seeing that they were all awake, Kinzu was no longer polite. All right, ha, you said so." After smiling and kissing a few more times, Kinzu finally let go of Zumengyo, turned around and walked to the little guys who were still pretending to sleep, and yelled, wake up, get up and put away the clothes." Huh. Frightened by the sudden voice, Daha and Da were the first to stick their heads out, wanting to see if there was a way to escape for them. There was no way. It was really that the voice was too familiar, it could be said to be deep in the bone. In the past, this voice represented warmth, care, and an inexhaustible supply of tender beef. But now this voice, in the ears of the little guys, is no less than the devil's death warrant. Well, although it is unlikely that they will die just like that, it is always hard to be cleaned up. "Where are you looking?" "Look here, stand in line." Looking at them one by one, seeing that the little guys were a little listless, Kinzu took out a horsewhip from the side and swung it twice in the air with some dissatisfaction. Snap. 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 Every sound of the whip hitting the air made the little guys feel frightened. Although I don't know what Kinzu wants to do, just stand in line. Maybe he is preparing to have breakfast. Thinking of this, the little guys instantly became energetic, and quickly turned out of their nests, holding the food bowls and walked downstairs. Oh, are you going to have another meal? Looking at the several empty plates in front of him, Kinzu was angry and amused. Okay, I am here to teach you a lesson and let you have a deeper impression. But you are so good, you set up an empty city plan for me. Do you think I will let you eat first? As a result, several little guys nodded in agreement. Even Zumengyo joined in the fun and said, "Husband, if you want to take them out, you have to make sure they are well fed, right?" Well, you are the oldest, okay? Rolling his eyes, Kinzu muttered a few words speechlessly, then got up and went to the warehouse to prepare food for the little guys. Siest escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto al mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subieron sin esfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 906. Take the little one with you. When the little guys finished the beef and fruits on their plates, patted their bellies, and were about to lie down to rest, they were grabbed by Kinzu. Where are you going? You want to run away after eating everything? Woof woof. Daha, whose ears were grabbed by Kinzu, looked particularly aggrieved. We all ran together. Why did you choose me to attack? As the boss, do you have to take the bullying of your younger brothers? Kinzu didn't know the grievance in this guy's heart. He grabbed his little ears, looked at the remaining little guys who hid far away, and scolded with a smile. Be alert, our lunch today depends on you. Hey, clean, are you done? Kinzu was still cleaning up the little guys, while Ben Kaza and others outside had packed their luggage and were ready to leave. I'm coming. Kinzu agreed casually, went upstairs and changed into a set of jeans. After taking out his Remington from the gun cabinet, he thought for a moment and put the Arkansas into his backpack. Of course, although he took fewer guns, Kinzu took a lot of bullets. Anyway, he had a backpack and it didn't take up any weight. When he got downstairs, Zumengyo looked at the little guys with some worry, opened her mouth to give them some more instructions, but didn't say anything. Okay, husband, be careful on the road, take good care of them. After helping Kinzu tidy up his clothes, she said goodbye reluctantly and watched him leave the villa. After leaving the villa, Ben Kaza and the others were getting a little anxious. After seeing Kinzu, Chad smiled and teased. Dude, if you can't bear to leave your wife, take her with you. It's good to have someone to accompany you on the road. Okay, I don't have any objection. Shrugging, Kinzu smiled and retorted. I just don't know if your wife is willing to come. After all, there are so many of us, I can't be the only one to bring the family, right? The smile on his face froze, and Chad was speechless. What a joke. Let that workaholic and queen-level wife come to accompany him hunting. Is he still asleep, or is it April Fool's Day? Okay, clean, everyone is here, shouldn't we set off? Ben Kaza looked around and saw that the two had already decided the winner, so he couldn't help but remind him with a smile. Well, everyone is here, let's set off. After counting the number of people, Kinzu smiled and nodded, and led the way to the stable. This time, Kinzu still brought his two female bodyguards, Dale and Erica, with him. Ben Kaza and his men were very light this time, with only one bodyguard and follower. However, according to Dale's secret reminder, Kinzu realized that although they only had one person, their fighting power was not necessarily much worse than the two of them. There was no way, compared with men, women were naturally weak in strength. Oh, my God. After arriving at the stable, Ben Kaza shouted in disbelief as soon as they chose their mounts. Dude, what's wrong with you? Kinzu, who had just turned over and sat firmly on Shiabai's back, was almost startled. He turned his head and looked at Ben Kaza, who was screaming, with some curiosity. Clean, you won't just bring a few little guys with us. Where's your big tiger? Pointing to the soft and listless little guys following behind Kinzu, Ben Kaza felt a little confused. Last time you went into the mountains, you brought a big tiger and scared me. This time, I was ready to wait for it to come out, but you brought out a few of them. Can they withstand my punch? Shaking his big hands, Ben Kaza's expression became even weirder. Oh, the big tiger, it's behind, I didn't dare let it come up. Without directly answering Ben Carter's words, Kinzu waved his hand not far away. Roar! Suddenly, a fierce tiger roar spread throughout the stable, breaking the long-lost peace on the ranch. Hi, hi, hi! Although they have been neighbors for a long time, these quarts still have an instinctive fear of jaguars. There is no way, the suppression of blood is not so easy to overcome. Except for Xiao Bai, all the quarts trembled a little when the white tiger slowly approached. Okay. Ben Carter was so scared that he quickly waved his hands at Kinzu. Clean, don't let it come over again, otherwise these horses can't stand it. Kinzu heard this and waved his hands at the white tiger that was slowly approaching, and signaled it to stay there. Very obediently, after seeing Kinzu's gesture, the white tiger immediately stopped and lay down, and used its big tongue to comb its hair lazily. Man, you're really great. The smiles on the faces of the few people who witnessed all this were relaxed and seemed to have agreed to it. In an instant, they all bloomed, so brilliant. Clean, are you a trainer? Richard turned over and got off the horse, looked at the white tiger not far away, and then looked at the few little guys behind Kinzu, and asked curiously. Ha, you can say that. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu also turned over and got off the horse, called the little guys to his side, and said with a smile, "This time when I go into the mountains, I will go to train these little guys." Oh my God, this is a little tiger. Look, is this a brown bear? No, it's all white. Is it a polar bear? But shouldn't polar bears be in the Arctic? It doesn't matter if you don't look. When Ben Carter and Jard carefully looked at the little guys, they all felt a little incredible. At the beginning, they didn't pay much attention to these little guys. Although they felt a little strange, they thought they were just some rare breeds of puppies raised by Kinzu. Who would have thought that they would be tigers and brown bears? However, although they were surprised, they were all experienced people after all. Compared with these animals, they wanted to know more about how Kinzu tamed them. Only Ben Carter, after staring at Betty for a while, stood up, took out his mobile phone and fiddled with it silently for a while, and asked curiously, "Clean, what kind of bear is this? Why have I never seen it before?" This, spreading his hands, Kinzu said helplessly. "I also want to know this question, but when I met it, it was wandering alone in the jungle, and I didn't see its own kind or its mother. Is that so?" Nodding, Ben Carter looked thoughtfully for a while, and said with a smile, "Since Kinzu have made arrangements, then we have nothing to say, and the safety on the road is left to you." No. Waving his hand, Kinzu smiled and teased, "I don't have so many hands, you need to pay more attention to it." Chapter 907. A few strange people. When the red sun slowly turned golden, Kinzu and his companions finally packed up. Riding on their chosen mounts, facing the warm spring breeze, a group of 13 people began to head towards the Appalachian Mountains. Clean, where do we go today? Ben Carter took out a map from his backpack, flipped through it for a while, and asked Kinzu beside him, "Are we still going the same way as last time? I feel it's a bit dangerous there." "Well, what do you think?" After hearing Ben Carter's words, Kinzu pondered for a moment, and did not answer in a hurry, but threw the question to the princes around him, especially Prince Richard. Just from Ben Carter's attitude towards several people, it can be seen that Richard's status in the family is definitely much higher than Ben Carter's. Maybe the reason why Ben Carter came this time was because Richard was curious about this matter. Because Ben Carter's performance along the way did not seem like he wanted to come here at all. He was always a little cautious, fearing that he would encounter any danger and accidentally lose his life. Clean, I think we should go back the way we came. What do you think? Richard's tone was as gentle as ever, and he was humble, but also had a bit of a negotiating tone. He was not like other princes and nobles who thought that what they said was what they said. They said where to go, and you had to go there. Kinzu felt very useful about this, and he also wanted to take a good look at that road again, so he nodded readily. "Okay, let's do what His Royal Highness Richard said, and we'll go back the way we came." Alas, seeing the rest of the people nodding in agreement, Ben Carter couldn't help but let out a long sigh. "Why don't you listen to the old man? You're in a hurry to die, but I haven't lived enough." Although Ben Carter didn't want to go, when he saw Richard's look, he could only lower his head in dejection. Now that the route was decided, it would be easy. He took out the walkie-talkie and spoke to Dale, who was leading the way, and the team immediately headed towards the goal. After more than 10 minutes of fast riding, the team stopped by the familiar woods. Dale led the bodyguards to dismount and moved the fence of the ranch away for a while before getting back on the road. Arriving here, the few people were no longer in a hurry to travel, and all slowed down their horses. Is this the place? Looking around curiously, Richard exchanged something with the bodyguards around him, and then looked at Kinzu with a smile. Clean, your security here is really good. There's nothing I can do. It's really too unsafe here. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu knew what he meant. There was nothing I could do but fence off such a large ranch, which was a bit expensive. However, Kinzu was a little surprised that compared with their acquisitions that cost tens of billions or even hundreds of billions, this should not even be considered a scumbag, right? How come the Arab tycoons now also know how to be frugal? Yes, although this place is under the banner of freedom and democracy, it is really too unsafe. After nodding in agreement, Richard did not say anything else, but looked around curiously, as if he was curious about everything. Boss, do you want to let them out? Erica, who was responsible for bringing the little guys over, looked at the little guys who kept twisting their bodies in the bags on both sides of her mount, and her expression was quite helpless. I'll put them down. Kinzu smiled awkwardly, and after coming to his senses, he quickly helped Erica to let the little guys out. It would have been better if they were not released, as they still had the energy to move around in the bag. But when Kinzu put them on the ground, except for Betty who could barely stand, the other 4 little guys fell down directly. What happened? Kinzu was startled, and quickly reached out to help Daha, who was closest to him, up. Although it was just a subconscious action, it made Daha feel so happy. Glancing at the few fellows still lying on the ground beside him, Daha was so proud that his mouth almost reached his ears. It's okay, boss, it's probably because he was jolted on the horse for too long. Erica beside him seemed to have expected this. Seeing Kinzu's worry, she smiled and explained. Is that so? Kinzu, relieved, did not help Daha again, and let it lie down again. Originally, he came here to train a few guys, isn't it just right now? Woof woof woof. Daha, who was just secretly happy that he was the most valued by his master, was suddenly let go by Kinzu and fell to the ground, looking at his master with a confused look. Am I not your little cutie? How can you bear to do this to me? Of course, this is because Kinzu doesn't understand animal language, otherwise he would have spit in its face. Just you. The little cutie who ruined several sets of my furniture. Go wherever you are to cool off. Daha, who was cheated by the unscrupulous owner, looked at the brothers lying beside him and didn't even dare to raise his head. It was too embarrassing. Oh no, it should be too embarrassing. Okay, just take a break, don't play dead. Kinzu planned to continue the image of an unscrupulous owner today. After a few minutes of rest, he came over and gently hit the heads of the little guys with a whip. Woo woo woo, or woo. After a series of protests, the little guys were successfully raised by Kinzu. Shaking his snow-white hair, Daha was the last to stand up. It seemed that it was not affected by the incident just now. After standing up, it rushed out first and led the way. Although it didn't walk much on the road here, it had already remembered it clearly. Slow down, pay attention to both sides, and report in time if there is any situation. Looking at the little guys who were rushing forward with their heads covered under the leadership of Daha, Kinzu shouted from behind with some concern. Hey, man. Jard walked over and patted Kinzu on the shoulder with a smile. Are you concerned about these little guys? Of course. Shrugging, Kinzu retracted his gaze and walked with Jard with a smile. Why, are you interested in this place too? Why not? Following Kinzu's example, Jard also shrugged and whispered with a smile. Not only am I interested, but many people are interested in this. Huh. Why do you say that? Kinzu pretended to be a little puzzled and asked curiously. Aren't there just 2 princes who got lost here? What's the big deal? Really? Jard's smile became a little cunning. Clean, do you really think so? Chapter 908 Big Secret. Click. Kinzu felt his heartbeat seemed to be more than twice as fast as before. His intuition told him that there must be something he didn't know about. Moreover, it was a huge secret. Dude, just say whatever you want to say. I'm a little confused. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Kinzu pretended to shrug calmly and said with a smile. Isn't it just hunting? Why make it so mysterious? Ha ha, hunting. Shaking his head, Jard chuckled, but said nothing and walked straight ahead. Fuck this bastard. He cursed this guy who kept people in suspense in his heart, chuckled, took out the walkie-talkie, and whispered to his 2 female bodyguards. Soon, Dale, who received Kinzu's call, did not lead the way in front, but quickly returned. The team that was following Dale stopped naturally after leaving the leader. Hey, Clean, what are you doing? Richard, who was originally whispering something with the tall and strong male bodyguard beside him, turned back curiously. "There's nothing I can do. She doesn't recognize the road ahead." Facing Richard's question, Kinzu responded calmly, and pointed at the few little guys in front, and said with a smile, "Aren't they still leading the way? Just follow them." "Them?" Richard didn't think much about it, and pointed at the big hectares in front, and said with a smile, "If we follow them, will they lead us back directly?" "Ha ha, that won't happen." Kinzu followed slowly behind, and smiled at Richard and said, "Your Highness, don't look at these little guys as small, but they're still first class at recognizing the road." "Oh, that's it." Richard didn't say anything else, turned around, and continued to communicate with the bodyguards beside him in a low voice. Kinzu was careful this time. After calming down, he tilted his ear and listened carefully. It's true that this effect is just right, especially after the transformation, the body has been improved in all aspects. Therefore, when Kinzu listened carefully, any movement within 100 meters could not escape his ears. Although he could hear it, Kinzu felt like punching cotton with his fist, which was soft and uncomfortable. Fuck, what the hell is this bird language? Listening to the chattering conversation in his ears, Kinzu had the urge to go crazy. Is it that important? What is so important that you have to talk about it in a language that I can't understand? No, it should not be just him who can't understand. Kinzu observed carefully. Except for Ben Kaza, who seemed to know nothing, the remaining 3 people including Jard also pricked up their ears and listened carefully. "Boss, what's wrong with you?" Dale, who noticed that Kinzu's face was a little wrong, didn't move, but his voice came quietly. "I don't know either." Shaking his head, Kinzu felt like being scratched by a cat, extremely itchy. He knew there was a big secret waiting for him to uncover, but he had no clue. "By the way, Dale, can you understand what they're saying?" Suddenly, Kinzu remembered that Dale could speak several foreign languages, so he cast a hopeful look at the cold-faced beauty beside him. "Hey, I'll try." Looking at the distance between the few people, Dale's face was a little serious, but she shook her lips and chose to agree. Like Kinzu at the beginning, she walked forward slowly, narrowed her eyes slightly, and focused all her attention on the 2 people talking in front. Ouch! Just when Kinzu was expecting good news, Dale, who was walking slowly, was tripped by a dead vine, lost her balance, staggered forward, and almost fell. Originally, with Dale's skills and alertness, not to mention a piece of dead vine, even a steel wire would not trip her. But who made her focus all her attention on the 2 men talking in front? So, even the agile Dale was really embarrassed this time. Not to mention the bodyguards, even the princess looked at her with a bit of strangeness. At first, they were so envious of Kinzu's female bodyguards. Some guys were even thinking about whether they should find a few to protect their safety after returning. But now, they immediately gave up their thoughts. Damn, she can stumble when walking, what's the point of having such a bodyguard? Is she protecting me, or am I protecting her? According to an old Chinese saying, it's an embroidered pillow, which looks good but is useless. Fortunately, everyone is well-mannered and will not laugh at others in public. So after just a glance, he turned his head and went back to his own business. Jard and Ben Carter, on the other hand, cast envious looks at Kinzu. In their opinion, with such poor skills, he could still be a personal bodyguard beside Kinzu, so it was self-evident what his specific job was. Although Kinzu wanted to defend himself, reality did not give him the opportunity to defend himself. Before he could even speak, he turned his head back. In desperation, Kinzu had to support Dale first and asked in a low voice, "Dale, are you okay?" "No, I'm fine." It was rare that Dale, who usually had little expression, blushed this time. I guess she felt a little embarrassed. "Boss, Dale, what are you doing?" Erica, who was following behind, did not hear the conversation between the 2. However, she still didn't believe that a dead vine could trip Dale, so she came forward to see what was going on. "Nothing." Waving her hands, Dale showed a little smile on her face, looking at Erica in front of her, and said meaningfully, "You go first, pay attention to the surrounding situation to prevent accidents." As a comrade in arms who has cooperated for many years, how could Erica not understand what Dale meant? After nodding, she didn't say anything else, turned around and walked aside. At the same time, one of her hands quietly reached behind her back and turned on the safety of the rifle. After Erica left, Dale's expression gradually relaxed. She shook her head with some regret and said, "Boss, I heard it, but I don't understand what they're saying." "Oh, okay." Although Kinzu was a little disappointed with Dale's words, he still asked unwillingly, "Dale, do you know what language they're speaking?" Chapter 909 Arabic. It seems familiar. In Kinzu's expectant eyes, Dale shook her head again, recalling and saying, "I can't remember it either. Anyway, it's an Arabic language, and it seems to be a relatively minor language." "Ah, so that's it." Kinzu sighed, slowed down his pace, and began to think about what other ways he could find out the ins and outs of this matter. At first, Kinzu thought that these guys were just second-generation rich people who had nothing to do and were curious about these things, so they came here to visit with great interest. But the development of the matter made him a little confused. Let alone other things, Kinzu could feel that these princes were not of one mind. Richard was obviously much stronger. As long as he spoke, the three princes, including Ben-Khazar, shut up silently. But perhaps because he was too strong, he seemed a little out of place. Except for his tough male bodyguard, he didn't get close to anyone. And Ben-Khazar? Although he was a little afraid of Richard, he didn't buy into the other two princes. If it weren't for the face, he didn't want to bring the two guys out. Naturally, the two princes who were not welcomed by both sides hugged each other, whispering all the way, and occasionally communicating with their bodyguards. However, what Kinzu couldn't understand was that since there might be some secrets hidden here, why did these guys bring Jard here? Is he a cannon fodder? Thinking of this, Kinzu shook his head secretly. It's impossible. Even the stupidest person would not think of using a prince consort as cannon fodder. Since he is not a cannon fodder, what use can he do? Moreover, he obviously knows something, but why should he remind himself? Kinzu scratched his head and thought for a long time without a clue. He felt a headache. "Boss, what's wrong with you?" Seeing Kinzu's expression was a little ugly, Dale asked with some concern. "No, it's okay." After coming to his senses, Kinzu realized that it was useless to bother about their purpose now. He should first figure out the language they used. Anyway, as long as he could understand what they said, he would not be afraid of being cheated by these guys. After comforting Dale, Kinzu narrowed his eyes, entered the system and found the language option. Arabic, where is it? Looking at the densely packed languages in front of him, Kinzu felt dizzy, but he still looked for them one by one. However, when he found Arabic, he was dumbfounded again. So many. After clicking on the Arabic language option, Kinzu was surprised to find that another sapling appeared in front of him. Southern Arabic. Modern Arabic. Arabic during World War II. Arabic during the Roman period. Looking at the small sapling in front of him, which was as tall as a person, and was covered with Arabic languages from various periods, Kinzu felt like 10,000 beasts running wildly in his heart. "Damn, why don't you give me Arabic from the Cretaceous period?" Sorry, there was no Arabic language in the Cretaceous period. Poof, Kinzu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He really wanted to ask this pitfall system why he didn't have so many troubles when learning English. Although Kinzu didn't ask, the system still sensed his doubts and explained in a low voice with a metallic texture. That's because the host is still learning general English, which does not include English from the historical period. Can you still learn this way? Looking up in surprise, Kinzu hurriedly asked. Then can this be done? Can I also only learn the general version? It's not that he doesn't want to learn more, it's just that the points for learning these things are too damn expensive. Okay, the learning fee is 200,000 points. May I ask if the host wants to learn the general version of Arabic? Yes. Without thinking, Kinzu nodded heavily, feeling so entangled. 200,000 points were gone just like that. The 20 million points he got from selling silver were almost squandered by him. He looked at his points balance. Well, 11 million, not bad. But what made him a little upset was that those antique treasures were worth at least hundreds of millions each. But his points didn't increase at all. Kinzu also asked the system. In principle, as long as the items were not salvaged from the ranch, no point would be added for selling. Of course, there are exceptions, but Kinzu just hasn't encountered them yet. Woof woof woof, roar roar roar, a burst of fierce dog barking, tiger roaring and bear roaring broke the silence of the jungle. Hurry up, go see what's going on. Without waiting for Kinzu to speak, Ben-Khazar hurriedly called out to the bodyguards. However, except for his own bodyguard who obediently rushed over, the other bodyguards looked at their boss. It was not until Richard and the others nodded that they took out an Uzi submachine gun from their arms and rushed up behind. Ben-Khazar didn't notice this at all, but instead cursed at the guys who ran slowly. "Fuck, what are you doing?" Go explore the way ahead. Ha, Your Highness, there's no need to be so nervous. Qinzu came back to his senses and shook his head. This guy doesn't have breasts, how can he be so stupid? Walking forward, facing Benkaza's somewhat panicked eyes, Qinzu smiled and explained. Your Highness, these guys just found prey, there are no two ferocious beasts, otherwise they would have run back long ago. Well, that's true. Benkaza smiled awkwardly, and under Richard's somewhat dissatisfied stare, Benkaza finally calmed down. In fact, it's not his fault that he was too nervous. The first time he walked this road, he ran thousands of miles away inexplicably. The second time he walked this road, his companions almost died when they walked halfway. Now it's the third time, he's not sure if he will have such good luck again. So, as long as there is a slight disturbance, he will be like a frightened bird. Among so many bodyguards, only he and his bodyguards kept their weapons in their hands, and they were always loaded. Clean, let's go up and take a look. After seeing Benkaza become obedient under his oppression, Richard showed a satisfied smile on his face, turned his head and invited Qinzu. Okay, let's go and take a look together. Qinzu nodded with a smile, and without hesitation, he took Dale and Erica, followed behind Richard, and walked forward. Chapter 910 Hawaiian Crow. As Qinzu expected, what attracted the interest of Daha and Daha were not some ferocious beasts, but just some reindeers that wandered over by accident. Your Highness Richard, are you interested in collecting a deer antler? Glancing at the panicked deer in front of him, Qinzu smiled and looked at Richard who was not far away. No, Clean, these are just little guys. Shaking his head, Richard smiled and declined Qinzu's kindness, suggesting, these 7-branch deer antlers are not interesting to collect. Next time we go to Africa, the deer antlers there are much bigger than these. Oh, really? Pretending to look over with interest, Qinzu smiled and said, I didn't expect that Your Highness the Prince is very knowledgeable about hunting. Ha, of course. Richard patted his chest without any modesty. When I was 14, I killed an adult male lion in Africa. That was amazing. Qinzu agreed with admiration, and then he started chatting with Richard. The more they talked, the happier they were. It seemed like they'd met too late. However, Qinzu wanted to curse in his heart. This old fox, even though he had tried to probe him several times, the other party just wouldn't respond. Boss, what should we do now? Qinzu, who had escaped under the pretext of going to the toilet, followed helplessly behind him, accompanied by Dale. How should I know? It's really frustrating. He waved his hand to signal Dale not to worry, and Qinzu opened the system again. This time, he didn't hesitate and directly chose to learn all the Arabic languages. In an instant, Qinzu felt that there were many strange and familiar pictures in his mind, some of which he knew, and some of which he had never seen before. Boss, what's wrong with you? Dale, who was walking beside him, saw Qinzu suddenly stop moving, and couldn't help but approach him with some worry. No, it's okay, I've got a solution. After being stunned for about 2 or 3 seconds, Qinzu came back to his senses, and his face was a little excited. You've got a solution? Dale was stunned when she heard the words, and stared at Qinzu with her big eyes in surprise, wondering why he had a sad face just now, and how could he have come up with a solution in just a short while. However, when the two eyes looked at each other, Dale found that Qinzu's eyes, which usually didn't look very colorful, became extremely deep at this moment. It seemed that something wanted to come out impatiently. Hey, Dale, what's wrong with you? Looking at Dale in front of him with a somewhat blurred look in his eyes, Qinzu was wondering in his heart, could it be that his brother has become so handsome? Oh, boss, what did you say? Startled by Qinzu's voice, Dale stepped back subconsciously, and 2 blushes appeared on her pretty cheeks. Are you okay? Qinzu asked uncertainly. Nothing. After waving her hand to indicate that she was fine, Dale touched her slightly hot cheeks and quickly changed the subject. Boss, let's go. Didn't you say you had a solution just now? Oh, that's right. After Dale said that, Qinzu also remembered that he almost forgot what he had said. Then let's go, let's catch up quickly. After the two of them took a few quick steps and caught up with the group in front, Qinzu did not immediately approach Richard, but found Erica instead, pretending to ask something. Your Highness, he's back. Although Qinzu's movements were small, the bodyguards who had been alert to the surrounding situation still noticed it immediately. Yeah, I see. Richard nodded imperceptibly, his eyes still fixed on the road, his mouth moving slightly, and asked in a strange voice. Baldwin, do you think he has begun to suspect something? I think so. The bodyguard beside him, who was as strong as a calf, nodded. From the questions he asked just now, this Oriental man has begun to doubt our purpose. Your Highness, do you want me to kill him? Hiss, the person who said it didn't react, but Qin, who was eavesdropping behind him, took a breath of cold air. Damn, I treated you all delicious food and drinks, and you actually wanted to kill me. Especially Baldwin's indifferent expression when he talked about killing people made Qin feel cold in his heart. It seemed that killing a person was like crushing an ant to death for him, without any psychological barriers. No. Shaking his head, Richard rejected Baldwin's proposal and said with a smile, the two women around him are not that simple. Since they have already noticed it, it is impossible that they are not on guard. They are just two women. Your Highness thinks too highly of them. Baldwin looked at the two female bodyguards following Qin behind him with a look of disdain. No, we can't take it lightly. Although he felt that what Baldwin said made sense, Richard still shook his head firmly. Now it's not just their side, but mainly because not everyone on our side listens to me. If a fight really breaks out, maybe they will team up to get rid of us first. This, after listening to Richard's words, Baldwin fell into silence. After a long time, he sighed lightly and shook his head helplessly. Then we can only do this for now. At this point, the two changed the topic and chatted while walking, but never mentioned what the purpose of this time was. This made Qin very anxious. Damn it, I spent so many points, not to listen to you guys being ungrateful. But it seemed that they were deliberately against Qin. Not only did they not discuss the purpose of this time, but they gradually stopped talking. The atmosphere at the scene suddenly fell into a strange silence. Quack, quack, several harsh bird calls came from far and near, causing several people in the field to frown. Damn, what kind of bird is this, calling so badly? Ben Carter, who was already a little depressed because of what happened just now, cursed in dissatisfaction. It seems to be a crow. It's a little different. Qin, who was following behind, raised his head and looked at a forest not far away. The call came from there. It's indeed different. This should be a Hawaiian crow. Richard, who had not spoken since just now, smiled and interrupted at the side. Hawaiian crows? How come they're here? Ben Carter looked at the small birds that flew out of the woods with unusually loud voices in surprise, with an expression of disbelief on his face. Chapter 911 Newfoundland White Wolf. Hehe, birds, don't they all migrate everywhere? What's so strange about that? Richard didn't seem to want to pay attention to his younger brother. After saying this with a smile, he continued to walk forward with his bodyguards. TSK, what's so great about it? No matter how great it is, it was still driven out. Ben Carter curled his lips, muttered a few words, turned around and followed. However, no one noticed that a mocking smile flashed across his face. Your Highness. Although Ben Carter's voice was very low, it didn't bother Richard's bodyguards. Just like Dale could hear their voices, as long as they paid attention, they could also hear Dale and the others' voices. It's just that because one is upwind and the other is downwind, the distance they can hear is different. But Ben Carter is not far from Richard. Even if he speaks a little more quietly, as long as Baldwin pays close attention, he can still hear it. Don't worry, wait a little longer. Waving his hand, Richard's face flashed with murderous intent, but he was forced to suppress it. Yes. Baldwin gritted his teeth. Although he didn't look back, he had made up his mind. As long as His Royal Highness gave an order, he would personally present the head of the guy behind him to the prince. Ben Carter, who was following behind, seemed to be completely unaware of the danger. He was just very curious about the conversation between the two people who were whispering about the project. Annie, can you hear what they're saying? Touching the bodyguard beside him, Ben Carter looked over with an expectant look. I'm sorry, Your Highness, I can hear it, but I don't understand it. Don't understand? As if he had expected this result, Ben Carter curled his lips and didn't continue to ask. Boss, let's go too. When everyone had almost left, Dale whispered a reminder in Qin's ear. Oh, okay, let's go. Qin came back to his senses from his contemplation and unconsciously agreed, and walked behind everyone. What's wrong? Dale couldn't help but be concerned when he found that Qin's expression seemed a little abnormal. Boss, have you thought of something? I did think of something. Qin nodded, and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. He was sure that this time it was definitely not these guys in front of him who teamed up to trick him. As for who would be tricked in the end, we could only wait and see. Although, a few shrill howls forced the group to stop and look nervously at the snow-white guys in front of them. What is this? He scratched his hair anxiously. Looking at the guys who looked like huskies in front of him, Ben Carter felt for the first time that his knowledge was a little lacking. Newfoundland white wolf, just a snow white wolf. Richard shrugged his shoulders. Although he used a very indifferent tone, Kinzu could clearly feel a few tremors in his voice. So it's a wolf. Nodding, as if to regain the face he had just lost, Ben Carter waved his hand. Annie, go and take care of them. Okay, Your Highness. After agreeing, Annie picked up the submachine gun in his hand and wanted to rush out. Wait. A loud shout stopped Annie, who was about to take action. Richard looked at his playboy and said with some dissatisfaction, Ben Carter, what do you want to do? I'm afraid it will hurt everyone. Although he dared to mutter a few words behind his back, when he really faced Richard directly, Ben Carter didn't have any temper at all. Humph, do you know how rare this kind of white wolf is? Idiot. Richard did not hide his disdain for his younger brother. After he finished speaking, he turned around and looked at Kinzu, but his face was replaced with a smile that made people feel like spring breeze. Clean, this time it depends on you, just let the jackdaw go over and scare them away. Okay, I understand. Smiling, Kinzu put his hand in his mouth and whistled hard. Roar! A tiger roar resounding through the forest came from behind the people, and the white wolves on the opposite side trembled in their hearts, and took a few steps back unnaturally. The white tiger summoned by Kinzu put down the piece of venison in its mouth, and its huge body quickly approached like a breeze. A moment later, in the eyes of the people who were either envious or jealous, the huge body of the white tiger jumped out of the bushes and stopped steadily at Kinzu's feet. Kinzu felt a little uncomfortable smelling the pungent bloody smell on the white tiger, but he still squatted down, pointed at the white wolf on the opposite side with his finger, and whispered in the white tiger's ear. Go, drive away those guys on the opposite side, remember, just drive them away. Roar! With a low roar to show understanding, the white tiger twisted its body, which was much larger than its peers, and slowly approached the white wolf on the opposite side. Not sure if it was an illusion, Kinzu looked at the white tiger walking slowly towards the opposite side and found that this guy seemed to have something extra. Well, it was the kind of thing that the legendary masters exuded when fighting. Momentum. Yes, it was momentum. Kinzu's eyes lit up and he stared at the white tiger carefully. Sure enough, wherever it passed, whether it was people or objects, they would retreat to the side. Even the weeds on the ground seemed to be blown by the typhoon, lying on the ground and not daring to look up. What a strong aura. Baldwin stood in front of Richard, staring at the white tiger passing by him with his eyes like lightning. His face was a little stern. He never thought that he would feel fear when facing a beast. What's wrong? Richard, who was blocked behind Baldwin, was a little confused. He was just a pampered prince, and he was not like his bodyguard, who could feel the aura that existed in the legend. He just felt that this tiger was too smart and could execute every word of Kinzu very well. Nothing, Your Highness. Do you think there will be any discoveries here? Shaking his head, Baldwin did not want to say that he was embarrassed, so he simply changed the subject. What do you think? Speaking of this, Richard's attention was immediately diverted, and a mysterious smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Ha ha, judging from the expression on Your Highness's face, you should have a conclusion, right? Seeing the smile on Richard's face, Baldwin's face flashed with joy, and he asked tentatively. Nodding, Richard looked at the white wolves opposite. His face was very excited. Newfoundland white wolf, Hawaiian crow, these are species that have been extinct for many years. Brothers and sisters, Happy Lantern Festival, Chapter 912 Druid. The cold north wind blew over the Appalachian Mountains, causing the branches to make a rustling sound. You're so scared. Ben Carter looked at the Newfoundland white wolves that were fleeing not far away, feeling depressed. I've prepared my melon seats and benches, waiting to enjoy a wonderful show of a tiger fighting a pack of wolves, and you ran away. But the fleeing white wolf ignored him, tucked its tail between its legs, and ran forward desperately, as if it hated its parents for not giving it 2 more legs. It should have been scared away. After all, wolves are not as good as tigers. Richard was a little confused at this time, but how could he, who always thought he was knowledgeable, give up this opportunity to speak? Only Kinzu and the bodyguards present understood what was going on. From the moment the white tiger appeared, its momentum was directed at the white wolves. As it approached step by step, its momentum became stronger and stronger. Even Baldwin couldn't stand it, let alone the white wolves that were the first to bear the brunt. So, less than 10 meters away from them, when the white tiger was about to launch a charge, they chose to flee. A man who knows the times is a hero. This is Kinzu's evaluation of those guys. Unlike other animals, they knew they were no match for the enemy, but they still went forward to provoke without knowing whether to live or die. Since it's solved, let's go. Looking up at the sky, Richard smiled and said to everyone, "It's getting late. Let's find a place to camp first." Kinzu heard it, looked at the time, and found that it was almost 11 o'clock, so he nodded. "Well, it's time to find a place to camp. I didn't feel it before, but I feel hungry now." "Ha, that's true." Touching his stomach, Ben Kaza agreed, "I've been walking for a whole morning, and I'm really a little hungry." Seeing that everyone agreed to his proposal, Richard smiled and nodded, turned around and walked in front with his bodyguards. To Kinzu's surprise, Richard and Kinzu did not remain silent, as if because of their excitement, and continued to talk in Arabic that others could not understand. "Your Highness, does that legend really exist?" Baldwin's breathing was a little rapid. Obviously, the legend he mentioned made him very yearning. "I didn't believe it before." Shaking his head, Richard's tone was also a little excited. He smiled and said, "But since I saw Keen, I believe it." "Why?" Baldwin was very confused. Could it be that the Oriental man really knew something? "Why?" Richard raised his eyebrows very slightly. "Do you think a normal person can make those beasts obedient? Even the animal trainers in the circus don't have this ability, right?" "That's true." Baldwin heard this and nodded thoughtfully. "So, he must have got something to make these beasts obedient to him." Richard made such a conclusion very solemnly. But what could it be? Baldwin scratched his head and said that he was a little confused. What else in reality can make wild beasts obedient? Anesthetics? Or love potion? "Ha, you don't know." Richard smiled mysteriously and said with an unfathomable look, "In the legend, there is such a profession. They accompany nature and live with all kinds of beasts. The most important thing is that they can easily tame all kinds of beasts. There are such people?" Baldwin opened his mouth in surprise. For the first time, he felt that his knowledge was a little shallow. He had only heard Richard mention the legend occasionally, but he didn't expect there were so many stories. "Of course, they are the darlings of nature, known as the Great Druid." Boom, as if a thunder rang in his ears, Kinzu's head boomed, and his heartbeat inexplicably accelerated a lot. Great Druid. Great Druid again. This is the second time Kinzu has heard this name. Could it be that there are really people like him in the world? And they are called Dark Druids? "Boss, are you okay?" Dale, who had been paying attention to Kinzu, came over involuntarily when she saw his ugly face. "No, I'm fine." After waving his hand to indicate that he was fine, Kinzu continued to listen with his ears perked up. Seeing this, Dale shook her head helplessly and followed Kinzu to be responsible for the situation around him. She said that she didn't understand it. Why did she pretend to understand it when she obviously didn't understand it? Do you think you can really learn a language in a few minutes? In that case, it's just a perversion, okay? But what is the fact? Kinzu, who has the assistance of the system, is even more perverted than a pervert. Dark Druid. Baldwin muttered twice in confusion and shook his head, indicating that he had never heard of it. Of course, it can't be blamed on his ignorance. After all, the United States is different from China. There are not so many so-called online novels, and netizens naturally can't get in touch with that wonderful world. Yes, it's the Dark Druid. Richard nodded, with a fanatical smile on his face. Legend has it that they have the power to change the world. With a wave of their hands, all beasts submit. But, after hesitating for a while, Baldwin said hesitantly, "But I think that Oriental kid is just so-so. Apart from being good at training pets, I don't see how capable he is." "Him?" Richard curled his lips in disdain. "If I'm right, he has only learned a little bit of the basics, or even he himself doesn't know that this is the ability of the Dark Druid, and thinks it is his own talent." "Ha, that's true." Nodding, Baldwin suddenly understood. He was saying, how could an Oriental kid be so powerful? It turns out that he just got lucky. Okay, we have to be careful. Although this may be the legendary resting place of the Great Druids, it may not be. Richard restrained the smile on his face and said worriedly, "Even if it is the resting place of the Great Druids, the danger is very big. If we are not careful, we may not be able to get out." "Don't worry, Your Highness." Patting his chest, Baldwin said confidently, "As long as I, Baldwin, am here, I will never let Your Highness come to any harm. That's the best." With a relieved smile, Richard looked at the people behind him and whispered, "If possible, let them go first." After all, they are also dangerous elements. Don't worry, Your Highness, I know that. Glancing at the princes and their companions behind him, Baldwin showed a cruel smile at the corner of his mouth. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto al mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en sinisfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 913 Top 3. HMPH, a clown. Qin Zhu curled his lips and retracted his attention. He looked around and observed the other people. He wanted to see how many people knew about this so-called legend. But after looking around, he was a little disappointed. Except for Judd, who looked thoughtful, the three princes, including Ben Carter, all looked lazy, as if they were looking forward to setting up camp as soon as possible. Alas, these guys. Shaking his head, Qin Zhu pulled Dale aside and, regardless of her surprise, directly hugged her in his arms. Boss, what are you doing? Smart Dale did not show any panic expression, but looked at him with some confusion. As expected of a soldier, his awareness is different. Qin Zhu sighed at Dale's reaction in his heart, but did not speak, with a wicked smile on his lips. Dale, be careful of them, especially Prince Richard's bodyguard, he might attack you. Qin Zhu whispered in Dale's ear, breathing out hot air, but the words he said made Dale's body tense. Okay, boss, I got it. TSK, clean, you really enjoy it. Ben Carter, who was walking in front, suddenly turned around and winked at Qin Zhu, indicating that he had seen everything just now. Aha, well, the weather is nice today. Pretending to be embarrassed and touching his nose, Qin Zhu looked around and started talking nonsense, giving people the impression that he was afraid of being teased and a little guilty. In this regard, no one, including Richard, would doubt it, but instead they all regretted it. What did they regret? They regretted why they didn't think of getting a female bodyguard. Although it's not okay for women to fight on the ground, who says that female bodyguards must fight with others? Isn't it enough as long as they can fight with themselves? Glancing at the tall and strong white man beside him, everyone, including Richard, nodded sincerely. Well, it's settled. I must find a female bodyguard to take with me when I go back. Okay, let's do it here. At this time, Baldwin, who was walking in front to lead the way, suddenly stopped and pointed to a small hill not far away. Your Highness, look over there, it's the most suitable place to camp. Richard didn't understand this, and he wouldn't interfere, so he turned around and looked at the people behind him and asked, "What do you think? If you are not satisfied, let's change it." Hearing Richard's words, including Qin Zhu, everyone shook their heads indifferently. There is no need to change it again, just here, I believe in Mr. Baldwin's professional level. In fact, this is all nonsense. How can a retired soldier from a special field unit not be able to find a place to camp? Just as Qin Zhu expected, after arriving at the place indicated by Baldwin, Dale nodded first. Boss, this place is great. There is a stream not far from here, and the height here is pretty good. Qin Zhu looked around after hearing this, but his mood became heavy. It's not easy to deal with them. Dale nodded after his smile faded. Yes, they are very professional, but I don't know how good they are at shooting. What are you afraid of? Erica, who was fiddling with a silver shining desert eagle in her hand, chuckled and said, "There are three of us here, and the boss is not bad either. Can we not beat them?" Ha ha, that's right. He nodded without any shame, and said proudly, "Back then, I was also a good player in the school sand team." Oh? Dale looked over curiously, and asked curiously, "Boss, have you ever joined the sand club?" "Yes, I was ranked in the top 3 in the club." Qin Zhu said this without changing his expression after puffing himself up a little with a guilty conscience. Oh? So awesome. Now, even Erica became interested. Only the boss's physique could rank in the top 3. She didn't know that Qin Zhu's physique used to be like a bedboard, and he would fall down if the wind blew. However, her not knowing didn't mean that Dale didn't know. Back then, Dale had thought about teaching Qin Zhu some self-defense skills. But in the end, Qin Zhu didn't persist and stopped practicing after a few days. But for such a person, he was in the sand club in college. And he ranked in the top 3. Is there no one left in China? Oh, boss. After a moment of silence, Dale asked tentatively, "How many people are there in your club?" "Well, there are a lot." Touching his nose, Qin Zhu said, "By the way, why don't you go over to help? They are all preparing to cook. They won't let me, and drove me back. Shrugging, Erica smiled and said, they think we are all the boss's women, and they won't let us work no matter what. This, Kinzu was a little embarrassed. What kind of eyes are these? How can they be so accurate? By the way, boss, you haven't told me yet, how many people are there in your club? As if to avenge the hatred just now, Dale knew that Kinzu was bragging, but still couldn't help wanting to expose him. Well, there are quite a few. With some sweat on his forehead, Kinzu stared at Dale fiercely, and the meaning was very clear. If you ask again, I won't be polite. But who is Dale? Are you afraid of this? She was secretly happy in her heart. Come on, let's see who will beat whom. Boss, tell me, you're ranked in the top 3, how many people are there in your club? Looking at Kinzu with a smile, at this time, in Kinzu's eyes, Dale had a pair of small black wings rising from her back. Touching his nose, Kinzu was helpless and stuttered. The club probably has about three people. Chapter 914 Summoning Reinforcements. While waiting for everyone to set up the tent, Kinzu signaled Beru, who was following him, to go to the forest to catch some wild game to prepare lunch for the group. After a while, looking at the dozen wild game lying on the ground, Richard smiled and teased. Ha, Clean, you are still comfortable. You don't have to go hunting by yourself. There are free wild game delivered to your door every day. Your Highness is too modest. Kinzu shook his head and said with emotion, if your Highness wants to eat a meal of wild game, I guess there will be people lining up to deliver it to you every day. That's different. Waving his hand, Richard came to Kinzu, signaled the bodyguard to put a mat on the ground, and sat down with a smile. Clean, you're right. If I want to eat something, there'll indeed be many people willing to find it for me, but they all have a purpose. When he said this, Richard sighed, his eyes seemed a little vague, as if he was reminiscing, and seemed to be a little emotional. Although Richard did not say it clearly, Kinzu already understood. As the old saying goes, if someone is too attentive to you, he is either a traitor or a thief. If someone is trying to please you, he must want to get something from you. Either money or status, there is always one thing he needs. Even those bodyguards, if it is not for money, who would work so hard to protect you? But animals are different. Take the white tiger for example. After Kinzu subdued it, he basically didn't take care of it. Even the food was solved by itself. But once it was used, it still rushed out without regrets and without hesitation. Clean, do you understand what I mean? Looking at Kinzu's thoughtful expression, Richard showed a smile on his face, as if talking to himself. People, they are unreliable. Only animals can be your most loyal partners. Without giving Kinzu time to think, after saying this, Richard stood up, patted his butt and left. Boss, what did he say? Dale, who had been watching here, saw him leave and quickly came over, with some concern in his expression. She had been worried that the guy would take the opportunity to launch an attack, so she and Erica were on guard not far away. Even the pistol on her waist had been quietly loaded. If the situation was a little wrong, she would make sure to shoot at the first time. Oh, nothing. Kinzu waved his hand, but did not get up. Instead, he sat on the mat, thinking about something thoughtfully. Kinzu himself did not believe what Richard had just said if he said there was no deeper meaning. But if he really thought about it carefully, Kinzu felt that he was worrying too much. No one can be trusted. So he meant that he didn't even trust his bodyguards. But listening to their conversation along the way and Baldwin's performance, all proved one thing. This is Prince Richard's confidant, an absolute confidant. But if that's the case, then what does he mean by this? Is he reminding himself? Saying that the people around him can't be trusted? Glancing at Dale and Erica who were looking at him nervously, Kinzu sneered in his heart. Even if he suspected something, he would not doubt the loyalty of the people around him. The power of the system needs no explanation. The more he thought about it, the more headache he had. Just when Kinzu was in a state of inexplicable irritation, he heard Chad shouting over there. Hey, Clean, it's time to start. As if he had been enlightened, Kinzu suddenly woke up from the irritable mood. No matter what he meant, he just had to protect the people around him from getting hurt, and it would be fine soon. Kinzu, who had made up his mind, turned his head and waved over there, smiling and saying, Okay, I'll be right over. Although he said that, after he stood up, he still pulled Dale next to him and rubbed his ears again. It was not until several princes on the side began to whistle loudly that he let go of Dale, who was blushing, and walked towards the crowd with a sly smile. After Kinzu left, Erica came up with an ambiguous look on her face, and said jokingly with a smile, "Little Dale, it seems that our boss is very interested in you. Shouldn't you seize the opportunity? Try to win her over." "What?" Dale gave her good sister a blank look, looked around, lowered her voice, and whispered a few words in her ear. "What does the boss mean?" Erica asked in surprise. "Yes." Dale nodded seriously. Suddenly, Erica smiled and whispered jokingly, "Ha ha, it seems that your good thing is not far away." Then, a few blushes appeared on Dale's pretty face, and the two of them laughed and played. This made Baldwin, who was responsible for monitoring them nearby, almost curse. Just now, he looked like an underground agent meeting, but he knew that he was talking about some little women's private words. How can he, a veteran who has been on the battlefield for a long time, bear it? "Fuck, you wait for me, sooner or later you'll fall into my hands." After cursing in his heart, Baldwin could only shake his head helplessly and retreat. He was afraid that if he continued to listen, he would easily get angry. If one of them could not control himself and rushed out, the consequences would be beyond his ability to bear. Not to mention whether he could catch the two women at once, the Oriental man was not so easy to mess with. Although his master was a prince, the guy was backed by the Prince of the British Empire. This was one of the reasons why Richard had never thought of using coercive means. Before there was any confirmed news, he did not dare to offend the prince of a big country. Just as Kinzu and his men were grilling around the charcoal fire and began to enjoy a sumptuous wild game meal, the keen manor at the foot of the mountain began to get busy. "Go! Go! Go!" A delicate shout broke the tranquility of the ranch. The fully armed Ween sisters rushed into the luxurious villa while yelling at the intercom. "Elsa, what happened?" Eva, who was chatting with Zoom and Gyo in the living room, immediately became nervous when she saw them. "Hi, ma'am, Miss Eva." After taking off her helmet, Elsa said with a smile on her face according to the prepared words, "It's nothing serious, it's just that the boss and his friends got lost in the mountains. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to find their way out, so they asked us to follow them in a helicopter and be ready to pick them up at any time." "Oh, so that's it." Eva, who was relieved, didn't think much about it. She looked at Zoom and Gyo sitting on the sofa and smiled and said, "Zoo, you really got it right. The boss is really a worry." "Yes. It's really a worry." Although Zoom and Gyo was a little confused, she didn't think much about it. She nodded and found the key to the hangar for Elsa and her sister. Chapter 915 No Way Out? After getting the key, the Elsa sisters looked at each other and felt relieved. They nodded to Zoom and Gyo and Eva, put on their helmets, and rushed to the second floor without stopping. "Eva, do you think Keen will be in trouble?" Looking at the backs of the two people going upstairs, Zoom and Gyo was inexplicably worried. "It shouldn't be." Eva looked upstairs with some suspicion, listening to the familiar sound of the helicopter engine, and comforted herself. Maybe Keen is worried that the people traveling with him will be in danger, so he asked them to go there to be prepared. After all, those guys are not ordinary. That's true. Nodding, Zoom and Gyo showed a smile on her pretty face, and she was a little proud of her boyfriend's social circle. It's incredible to think about it. He was an ordinary office worker before, how could he change so much in 1 year? Are all the people here? After driving the helicopter out from the second floor and hovering not far from the villa, Elsa asked loudly through the intercom. "Everyone is here." Glancing at the crowd below, Elsa reported, "Except for the two who stayed behind to protect the wife, the remaining 7 people are all here. Board the plane." With a command, the 7 fully armed female special forces waiting on the ranch rushed over at lightning speed, and completed the actions of boarding the plane and closing the hatch within 3 seconds. As the hatch closed, the helicopter slowly pulled up and quickly approached according to the location sent by Dale. After a while, the helicopter arrived over the mountains, but did not fly directly over. "Do you understand your mission?" After hovering the helicopter in the air, Elsa turned on the communicator and asked loudly. "Understood, find the boss and protect him to leave safely." The 8 voices, although the sound quality was different, were full of determination when they said this. "Very good, contact me immediately after finding the person, I will be ready to pick you up nearby." Nodding, Elsa waved to her sister, indicating that they could act. After receiving her sister's instructions, Ween unfastened her seatbelt, checked her equipment, opened the hatch and jumped down. As if dumplings were being dropped into the water, as Ween landed safely, figures slid down the cable one after another, and then quickly disappeared into the mountains. After everyone landed safely, I silently saluted, and then drove the helicopter to start wandering around the periphery of the mountains. It's not that she didn't want to go, but among so many people, she had the best driving skills, so she had to be responsible for flying the plane. After enjoying the sumptuous wild game meal, Kinzu and his friends decided to take a break before continuing their journey. Just as Kinzu was lying on a big rock in the sun, Dale walked over quickly. "Boss, everything has been arranged." "Well, when will they arrive?" Without even opening his eyes, Kinzu muttered a few times, as if he was talking in his sleep. "About an hour." After checking the time and estimating the speed of her comrades, Dale gave an approximate time. "Hee, that'll do." Sitting up, Kinzu had a sly smile on his face, and said with some gloating, "I want to see what these bastards want to do. They are so arrogant on my territory." "Boss, don't worry." With a confident smile on her lips, Dale said confidently, "As long as the sisters arrive, even if they are given 10 more people, they won't be able to make any waves." "Really?" Looking at the smile on the face of his cold-faced female bodyguard, Kinzu felt a very strange feeling in his heart. It seems that since when did Dale become more and more fond of laughing? The communication between them is normal, but in the eyes of outsiders, it is intimacy all the time. Ben Carter, who was not far away, couldn't bear to see this couple doing this when they hit time, so he stood up and shouted, "Hey, man, can we set off?" "Oh, what time is it?" Kinzu stood up and stretched, and looked at the time. It was already past 1 in the afternoon. "Let's go, let's set off as soon as possible and try to reach the next camping site before dark." "Yes, try to get out of this mountain range before dark." Nodding in agreement, Richard smiled and signaled the bodyguards to start packing. With a few echoes, everyone worked together and soon cleaned up this temporary camp. "Clean, how long would it take?" As soon as they set off, Ben Carter came over and asked hopefully. The deeper they went, the more scared this guy felt. Don't look at how fierce he was just shouting, that was just for show. He now hoped that Kinzu and the others would suddenly say they didn't want to go and turn back. However, Kinzu's answer made his little heart beat violently. "It's not too far. It seems that we will reach the place where we walked last time in a little while." "So fast?" "Fast." Looking back at this guy curiously, Kinzu smiled and said, "It took quite a while last time. Didn't you feel it?" "Well, I think so." He smiled awkwardly. Ben Carter thought that he was busy escaping at the time, so how could he remember these? "Okay, everyone speak up." Without paying any more attention to this guy, Kinzu turned his head and looked at the people behind him, and said with a smile, "While it's still light, let's go and see if there will be any discoveries." "Kin is right, let's speed up." Richard nodded and agreed with Kinzu's words, so he signaled everyone to speed up. Woof woof woof, the little guys were still walking in front, but this time the white tiger followed. After all, it was already a deep forest. A few white and tender little guys appeared here. Isn't that a naked temptation to the wild beasts? At this time, Kinzu also regretted it. If he had known that things would turn out like this, he would never have brought the little guys out. Daha, Beru and Betty were all okay. They were his pets, and he could directly take them back to the pet space when they were in danger. But Xiaohe and the brothers Dahu and Xiao were not like that. Without a pet contract, there was no place for them in the pet space. Just when he was scratching his head, he heard Dale beside him whisper, "Boss, there is no way." Huh. He looked up in confusion, and saw a dense forest in front of him, and the simple path made by people had disappeared without a trace. Chapter 916. Run. Run. That's not right. Kinzu scratched his head in confusion. He remembered that this path should have to go a long way to the end. Did I remember it wrong? Kinzu muttered to himself twice, and looked at Dale, hoping to get the information he wanted from her. Fortunately, Dale did not disappoint him. When he looked at her, she shook her head very slightly. Although it was just a slight shake of the head, in Kinzu's opinion, it was an affirmation of his memory. Sure enough, has this changed? Touching his chin, Kinzu showed a smile at the corner of his mouth. Things are getting weirder and weirder. What's wrong? Clean, what happened? Seeing Kinzu stopped, Richard behind him quickly came up, and he was getting more and more nervous. It's okay, there's just no way out. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu didn't mention that this place wasn't like this before, but smiled and asked, "With so many of us, should we just open a path or find a gap to go through?" "Open a path." Without any hesitation, Richard waved at the other two prince's bodyguards, signaling them to go forward and open a path. Richard, isn't this inappropriate? How can we let them go? Receiving the probing gaze of his bodyguard, one of the princes couldn't help but stand up. If he doesn't go, you go. Not giving this guy any room for negotiation, Richard waved his hand and said very firmly, choose one of the two. You, the prince who stood out blushed, but he didn't dare to really fall out with this guy, so he had to wave his hand weakly. Go, be careful. As if he had already anticipated this result, the white man who was named just nodded slightly, took out a machete from his luggage, and walked past Qinzu and his companions and headed forward. Let's go, we have to hurry up. Waving his hand, Richard led the way forward, but the sneer of mockery that flashed across his mouth was caught by Qinzu. Where there are people, there are rivers and lakes. Shaking his head, Qinzu and Dale looked at each other and followed with a smile. Isn't this exactly what they like? With two bodyguards leading the way with machetes, the speed of the few people was not as fast as at the beginning, but the road was indeed much easier to walk than before. Even the little guys and the white tiger were called back by Qinzu, because they were no longer needed. Their initial task was just to serve as a warning and disturb the snakes and insects. Clean, do you think the air here is good? As if he thought of something, Richard turned his head and looked at Qinzu with some expectation. Is it good? Qinzu was stunned when he heard the words, and then felt it carefully. It seemed that it was indeed better. Maybe it's because there are more plants here? Qinzu pointed to the dense bushes around him with some uncertainty. He felt that his inference should be correct. Really? A flash of disappointment flashed in his eyes. Richard said nothing more and turned around to continue walking forward. Although he said this to Richard, Qinzu himself didn't think so, because he could clearly feel the difference in the air around him. Especially the little guys, it seemed like they were back home, their expressions were so happy. Moreover, the momentum of the white tiger was also growing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and its size also became much larger again. Fuck, this can't be true. Qinzu rubbed his eyes in disbelief and looked at the white tiger again. That's right, this guy really developed again. Not only did his momentum become stronger, but his size also grew from more than 3 meters to almost 4 meters. It's incredible. Hearing the voice, Dale came back to his senses and showed an expression of disbelief. Okay, let's go, don't let them find us. After waving his hand, Qinzu signaled Barely to stay away, then he breathed a sigh of relief and rushed towards the team with Dale. I say, Clean, can you not be so anxious? Seeing that Qinzu and the other fell behind again, Ben Kaza curled his lips in dissatisfaction and looked at Dale with great envy. If he hadn't estimated Qinzu's identity, he would have asked for it directly. There was no way, the pressure on him was too great now, and if he didn't find some excitement, he felt that he would explode sooner or later. Hey, brother, you know that you are too powerful. Qinzu winked at this guy cunningly. Qinzu looked like a strong brother, which stimulated this guy's eyes to fire. Fuck, are you provoking me? Waving his slightly fat hands, Ben Kaza muttered unconvincedly. If you have the guts, don't leave when you go out. Let's go to Boston and find a bar to compete and see who is the best. Qinzu didn't expect that his unintentional words could provoke this guy like this. However, looking at his expression, if he didn't agree, he would still pester him for a while, so he said, okay, you can choose the time and place. This, Qinzu agreed so readily that Ben Kaza was a little stage frightened. However, feeling the gazes around him, he still bit the bullet and agreed. Okay, then we have an appointment, let's go out and compete. Qinzu shrugged indifferently, showing an attitude of everything is up to you, which really made Ben Kaza feel a little uneasy and began to think secretly. No, we have to contact that guy when we get back and ask them to get me some good stuff, otherwise it will be embarrassing if we really lose. Okay, let's go quickly, or we will be out of luck. The guys who witnessed the birth of a fast dispersed after the two men handed over the challenge to each other, all looking forward to the result of the game. They also wanted to know whether Asian men were stronger or Arabs were stronger. Fuck, your highness, run, your highness, run. Just as several people were walking forward with a mentality of watching the fun, the two male bodyguards who were leading the way screamed at the same time and ran towards here desperately. What's going on? What's the situation? What happened? The people who heard the bodyguards' shouts seemed to suspect that there was something wrong with their ears. They were all a little confused and stood there in a daze, feeling quite at a loss. Chapter 917. Join together and support. Hurry, boss, run. After all, the bodyguards reacted faster. When the princes and Kinzu were confused, they all pulled Kinzu and started running. Richard, Ben Carter, Judd, hurry up. Although he didn't know what was going on, Kinzu still ran after them and shouted to the stunned people behind him. Just this shout made the confused people react and run after Kinzu. Even Baldwin was protecting Richard and running away at this time, and he didn't even think about checking what happened. There was no way, the bodyguards shouting was too scary. Even though he had been a bodyguard for so many years, he had never seen any of his colleagues make such desperate shouts. Ah, God, save me, bang. Bang. Fuck, you beasts, get out of here, get out of here. Bang. 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 As if to verify Baldwin's idea, when they ran out not far, they heard a chaotic shouting from behind, accompanied by a few crisp gunshots. But what made them despair was that the gunshots only rang a few times, and then there was no sound again. Even the shouts of the two bodyguards gradually turned into screams, and then there was no sound at all. Ugh, ugh, the two princes, who were a little worried about their bodyguards, turned around and saw the scene in front of them, and immediately collapsed to the ground and began to vomit crazily. Fuck, get up quickly, don't you want to live? Although he didn't know what happened later, seeing the two brothers' behavior at this time, Richard admitted that he was scared. Without turning his head, he signaled Baldwin beside him to save his two brothers, and then Richard ran forward desperately. At this time, he had forgotten the purpose of coming today, and he also forgot that it was really unnecessary for him to save these two people. After all, they would not help him at all except wasting food. But subconsciously, Richard still asked his bodyguard to rescue them, without thinking whether it was worth it or not. Perhaps, people will only reveal their true nature when they are at the critical moment of life and death. Kinzu, who had been observing these people silently, came to this conclusion in his heart. Don't ask Kinzu why he still cares about this at this time. Shouldn't he focus on escaping? Maybe Kinzu thought so at the beginning. But since he felt a familiar breath from behind him, he put his heart to the bottom of the valley. Maybe he can't save these people, but it should be no problem to save his own life. That's right, Kinzu felt a familiar breath among the pursuers who suddenly appeared behind him. Cheese. This spiritual level python was actually following the group of pursuers behind him. And according to the information that this guy brought back, Kinzu was shocked to find that the python that was so powerful that it was invincible near the sea in his eyes was not ranked among the group of pursuers behind him. Damn, no wonder those guys were paralyzed with fear. Thinking that if he saw a bunch of animals as big as small monsters without any preparation, he would also collapse. While Kinzu and his companions were madly running for their lives, Ween, with 7 fully armed female bodyguards, was approaching them at a cheetah-like speed. Because just now, they heard gunshots. Although it was very faint when it reached their ears, it was gunshots after all. In addition, Kinzu and his companions were only concerned with escaping at the moment, and they had no time to check their communicators. As a result, Ween thought that something was wrong with them, and immediately led people to surround them. Go. Go. Pay attention to the situation around you and keep in touch at any time. While running quickly, Ween did not forget to keep in touch with her comrades by looking at her communicator. Although Ween was a little naughty and liked to make fun of others in her daily life, when she really started to perform the mission, this girl was terribly calm. This is one of the reasons why Aya was confident that her sister would lead the team. Otherwise, it would be her, as the elder sister, who should take the lead. Sister Aya, we have discovered something here, coordinates 289, 902. A pleasant report made the running female bodyguards stop abruptly and quickly gather in one direction. Is this the trace of a path? Looking at the bushes cut by the machete in front of her, Ween's face lit up and she was about to order to follow this path. But at this moment, a sudden noise not far away made her pause. Boss, it's the boss. A female bodyguard who had already raised her gun suddenly put it down again and cheered loudly. It is indeed the boss, but they seem to be in danger. Ween also came back to her senses at this time, but she saw farther than others. Just from Kinzu's current state, she guessed that the matter was almost certain. Boss, this way, this way. After waving her hand and shouting loudly at Kinzu, Ween led several female bodyguards who had raised their guns again and rushed towards Kinzu. Hurry, run, Ween, there is danger behind. Kinzu, who was running, suddenly saw his bodyguards appearing here, and he couldn't help but screaming in fear. On the one hand, he was worried that these guys behind him would deal with his beautiful female bodyguards. On the other hand, he was worried that his female bodyguards would hurt Cheese behind him. After all, he was not sure whether cheese could withstand the bullets. But Ween, seeing Kinzu in such a miserable state, had been holding back a ball of anger in her heart. How could she listen to Kinzu and turn around and run? Besides, what is their obligation as bodyguards? Isn't it to face the difficulties when the employer is in danger? So ignoring Kinzu's shouting, Ween led several female bodyguards and directly past Kinzu and others, forming an attack formation behind them. These girls. Looking at the backs of the few people, Kinzu cursed them with both emotion and helplessness. Boss, let's go first, they will be fine. Although Dale was a little worried about the safety of her sisters, she also understood that someone had to block them from behind, otherwise no one could escape. Boss, you go first, I'll go support them. Erica, who had been running for a long time without knowing why, took the rifle from behind, said something to Kinzu, and ran towards Ween and the others without looking back. Damn it, these girls are really a worry. Chapter 918. Firefight. Continue to request support. Although Erica's arrival surprised Ween, she couldn't say anything more at this time. Looking at the big guys in front of her, Ween forced herself to restrain the urge to turn around and run away. She shouted hysterically with a trembling voice. Hit them hard. Bang. Bang. Bang, snap. Snap, boom, 9 fully automatic rifles emitted dazzling flames, and bullets poured like a waterfall towards the giants 200 or 300 meters away. At the same time, the grenades brought out just in case also came in handy. While changing the magazine, several female bodyguards used all their strength to throw the grenades in their hands. Although the distance was too far and they didn't hit, the deafening explosion also frightened the giants. After being hit head-on one after another, the guys on the opposite side were also a little confused at this time, not knowing what to do. Want to retreat? The pain in their bodies made them unable to swallow their anger. But if they said to rush up, they were a little timid. Although the bullets had no effect on them, the explosion really frightened them. Roar! A deafening roar came from the mouth of a mountain lion that was more than 7 meters long. The effect was definitely extraordinary. Even Kinzu, who ran far away, felt his ears numb, not to mention the female bodyguards who were the first to bear the brunt. However, none of them said a word, and the weapons in their hands continued to pour bullets towards the opposite side with a momentum that was free of charge. Although, following the big lion, a gorilla as tall as a 3-story building kept beating his chest with his fists, and it seemed that he wanted to rush up directly. Bang! A somewhat different gunshot sound came from far away, and it also shocked the spirits of Ween and others. Without looking, Ween could hear it with her ears. This was the sound of a cannon. Sure enough, with the sound of the gunshot, the gorilla that was beating its chest not far away fell down. Although I don't know if it's dead or not, Ivan knows that it is definitely not feeling well. Sister Dale, why are you here? Where's the boss? Turning around, Dale's familiar figure came into the eyes of Ivan and the others. Focus on fighting, I'm here. Kinzu took out the Arkansas -47 from his backpack and rushed up from behind with a large box of bullets. Boss, you? Seeing Kinzu, Ivan was a little moved, but she said, why are you here? Didn't I tell you to retreat first? We will retreat immediately. Retreat? Where to retreat? Kinzu smiled bigly. He just thought that if these big guys were led to the ranch, it would be a real disaster. Moreover, he also believed that as long as these guys showed up, the Americans would not kill them first, but would think of capturing them for research. Countless movies have proved this point. Let's not talk about whether he still wants the ranch at the time. He still has many doubts in his heart. How can he let these guys be caught by the government? But we can't stop them. They are not afraid of bullets. Shaking her head, Ween's hand has not stopped, but there is a hint of helplessness in her tone. Because she has clearly seen that the gorilla who was shot down has actually climbed up. Not only that, this guy also reached out and pulled the bullet from his forehead. Damn, so fierce. Kinzu was also a little dumbfounded. This is a cannon that is said to be able to penetrate steel plates, but it didn't even penetrate this guy's bones. Boss, call Aya quickly, we need her support. Dale quickly changed the bullets and reminded Kinzu loudly. Yes, call Aya, there are heavy machine guns on the plane. Slapping his thigh, Kinzu was a little surprised and quickly took out the communicator from his body. Elsa, can you hear me? Boss, can you hear me? Where are you now? Hearing the dense gunfire come in from the communicator, Elsa's hand holding the joystick shook, and the helicopter was almost crashed into the mountains by her. Coordinates 908, 570, come quickly, we can't hold on any longer. Kinzu didn't have time to explain in detail, and he directly reported the coordinates. When Elsa came, he naturally understood the danger of the situation. Got it, I'll be there soon, boss, you have to keep the communicator open. As she spoke, Elsa pulled the joystick, and the helicopter drew a beautiful arc in the air and quickly moved towards the mountains. Fuck, this guy, is he really made of steel? Seeing another cannon bullet being pulled out of the gorilla's head with his hands, Kinzu almost wanted to go crazy. No, this one doesn't count, that one does. Pointing to the other side, Dale quickly turned the muzzle of the gun and aimed at another beast. Damn, what is this? Kinzu's eyes almost popped out of his head as he looked at the guy that was moving freely in a hail of bullets not far away. I don't know, but it should be a lizard. Dale shook his head and said bigly, if it can't fly, we would all die here today. That should be a green iguana, a common pet in the United States. Richard's voice suddenly sounded behind that few people. At the same time, a tongue of fire also rushed from the submachine gun in Baldwin's hand towards the 8-meter-long lizard. Why are you here? Kinzu turned his head in surprise and looked at it. Shouldn't these princes run away of this time? Hey, Clean, don't underestimate us. Shrugging his shoulders, Richard raised the rifle in his hand and shot the big lizard in the head. Although we are princes, we are not the kind of people who abandon our partners and run away. Hiss, hiss, after suffering a series of blows, the big lizard in heavy armor was obviously a little angry. It raised its head and rushed over with a roar. Bang! Dale seized the opportunity and shot directly into its mouth. Hiss, after making a trembling cry, the big lizard, which was originally aggressive, immediately turned around and went into the jungle behind it. This is not dead. Ben Carr's trembling voice sounded next to him, which also attracted Kinzu's sidelong glances. Good guy, I thought this guy was timid and didn't dare to come, but I didn't expect him to come too. Clean, Richard is right, we are not the kind of people who abandon our partners and run away. After saying this with a trembling voice, Ben Carr almost cried, he felt so wronged. Which bastard doesn't want to run away? But none of you guys took me with you. I'm alone in this big forest. Do I dare to run? Chapter 919. Took stimulants. Haha, good job, you are worthy at being our warriors. Although he didn't know whether what these guys said was true or not, Kinzu had to praise them generously just because they dared to come over this time. You know, there is not only a mountain lion, a gorilla and a big lizard on the opposite side. Not counting other things, Kinzu saw more than 10 of them now. Reindeer, wild boars, lynx, grey wolves, foxes, pythons, not only are there a lot of them, but they are also quite big. According to Kinzu's visual observation, there is no one under 6 meters. If it weren't for the grenades that exploded from time to time, which gave them a little threat, these guys would have rushed up in a swarm. Boss, the grenades are almost gone. After throwing the last grenade in her hand, Wing reported helplessly. She had made full preparations this time, but there were only a few people, and she had to bring weapons and ammunition, so she couldn't bring many grenades. Fight and retrieved at the same time. Don't let these guys rush over. Before Kinzu could speak, Dale had already made the decision for him. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu nodded to Ian, indicating that he would listen to Dale. There was no other way, because she was a professional. After receiving the order to retreat, the gunfire in the field did not decrease much. Instead, under Dale's organization, there was a more violent rain of bullets. This time, the guys on the opposite side were caught off guard and were shot with holes all over their bodies. Although these wounds were not fatal, it hurted. The gorilla, which was several stories tall, raised its head and roared, and rushed forward again. At this moment, it was extremely angry. These damn humans not only disturbed its rest, but also hurt it so much. If it didn't tear these guys to pieces, it felt sorry for the wild boar it had eaten in the morning. Bang! A familiar gunshot sounded, and in the gorilla's frantic expression, the cannon's 12.7mm bullet once again accurately hit the target. Roar! With only time to let out an anxious roar, the gorilla's body, which was several stories high, fell down in the forest with a bang, crushing countless flowers and plants. Ouch! What was even more coincidental was that because the distance was too close, a wild boar that had no time to dodge was directly pressed down and immediately let out a painful howl. Roar! Blinking in confusion, the gorilla sat up in some confusion. It felt that it didn't feel much pain this time. It was not until it stood up completely and saw the wild boar under it that was hit half to death that it suddenly realized something. What was unexpected to Kinzu and his group was that they thought that facing the half-a-dead wild boar, this gorilla, which looked like a bad guy, would kill it directly to save themselves and others some trouble. But what was the reality? Facing the same kind of wild boar that he had eaten in the morning, this gorilla, which looked very ferocious, not only did not take the opportunity to attack it, but instead helped it up with great effort. Damn, run, these guys have become spirits. Kinzu slapped his thigh and looked at the people who were already preparing to retreat. A few anxious expressions rarely appeared on his face. Yes, retreat immediately. Although she didn't understand what becoming a spirit meant, Dale still saw the anxious expression on Kinzu's face. She originally wanted to cover him with a hail of bullets again, but she immediately changed her mind and took the lead in packing up her things. But all this seemed a little late. The few big guys on the opposite side who had already reacted, their already irritable tempers, became a little manic. Wild beasts are wild beasts after all. Even if they have opened a little spirituality, once they become irritable, they really don't care. Although they were still a little afraid of things that could explode, the frenzied beasts actually rushed over here despite the dense rain of bullets. Not good. Seeing that the situation was not good, Dale raised the cannon in his hand again, and shouted to the people around him. You in, hurry up, cover the boss and leave first. Yes. Although she was a little worried about Dale's safety, Yuin still understood the priorities of the matter at this time. She quickly put away her gun and retreated. After calling the two female bodyguards, she wanted to carry Kinzu away directly. Although her movements were fast enough, the speed of the frenzied beasts was beyond people's imagination. Especially the clouded leopard in the lead, which was originally known for its speed. When it was sprinting at a short distance, even Dale's cannon failed to hit it, so a reindeer behind it took a shot for it. Roar, 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 the clouded leopard roared to the sky, opened its big mouth full of sharp fangs, and rushed towards the few people. Ah, bang. 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 With Benkaza's scream, several female bodyguards and Baldwin quickly turned their guns and pulled the triggers continuously at the clouded leopard. However, this only slowed down the clouded leopard a little bit. Although the bullets hit it, blood splattered everywhere, but it did not seriously injure it at all. Roar, just as Dale and his men were about to come forward to fight in close combat with Red Eyes, a familiar roar came from behind them. White Tiger. Kinzu looked back in surprise. Sure enough, the white tiger that had run away to who knows where appeared in front of them again. Moreover, unlike Kinzu's previous impression, the white tiger, which had already grown to more than 6 meters in length, once again grew in size. Richard, who never believed in God, was dumbfounded when he saw this, and he kept muttering, "Oh, God, is all this real? I'm not dreaming, am I?" Roar, roar, seeing the white tiger in front of him, which was now nearly 10 meters long, the clouded leopard opposite, which had just been so arrogant, immediately became timid. It staggered back and forth, making a low, muffled roar, as if it was demonstrating or threatening. Roar, without communicating with this guy, the white tiger suddenly exerted force on its limbs, roared to the sky, and pounced on the clouded leopard. Ah, facing the imposing white tiger, the clouded leopard turned around in fear, and the little tail that had just been raised straight was directly tucked up. "B-boss, this is a white tiger." Not only Richard was stunned, but even the female bodyguards in the manor, such as Evelyn, only woke up from their dreams at this moment. "Yeah, how's it? Handsome, right?" Kinzu laughed and opened his pet system while watching the battle in the field. He wanted to study carefully what kind of stimulants this white tiger took today. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a Mundo Fanfic Novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo Fanfic Novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 920. Another spiritual beast, Jaguar level. Spiritual beast, just a few simple words, but Kinzu exclaimed from the bottom of his heart. As expected, the Gold Commander level Jaguar actually became a spiritual beast. This is the first spiritual beast he has cultivated besides cheese. After all, cheese was a direct reward from the system, and it cannot be considered that he cultivated it himself. However, what made Kinzu a little depressed was that although the white tiger became a spiritual beast, he had no experience at all. In fact, he didn't even know why the white tiger could become a spiritual beast. Alas, I still have to work hard. Shaking his head, Kinzu sighed helplessly. He also planned to turn all these guys in his family into spiritual beasts after finding an opportunity. Not to mention anything else, the lifespan alone has increased too much. Roar! With a deafening roar, the white tiger jumped up and slapped the clouded leopard's back with its front paws. Crack! With a worrying and horrifying sound of bones breaking, the clouded leopard, which was still running hard, fell to the ground, and blood gushed out of its mouth like a fountain. Woof woof woof, woof woof woof. As if they had found something good, several little guys, including Daha and Dawu, rushed over. Hey, what are you doing? Kinzu was a little dazed. What was going on? But the guys seemed to have red eyes at this time. Not only did they ignore Kinzu, but they surrounded the dying clouded leopard and started to bite it. This, blinking, Kinzu turned back and looked at Dale. Both of them were a little confused. Roar roar roar! The roar of the white tiger interrupted the thoughts of several people, and finally made Kinzu react. He was not safe yet. Although the clouded leopard was killed, the guys behind were not easy to deal with. I just don't know if the white tiger can stop them. Just as he was thinking, the white tiger, which was facing the enemy head-on, had already collided with the silverback gorilla that rushed over. Ouch! Without any surprise, the silverback gorilla's painful howl made Kinzu feel relieved. The spiritual beasts were indeed not something these guys could match. Think about it, even if these guys were big, they were just ordinary beasts that had not evolved completely. However, things in the world are always so wonderful. Kinzu was still marveling at the fighting power of the white tiger, but Dale on the other side had already begun to remind him. Boss, let's get ready to retreat, these guys are about to surround us. Hearing this, Kinzu realized that although he had a series of good moves, the other guys were not slow either. Let the big guys hold the white tiger tightly, and the other guys directly surrounded it from both sides. Kinzu pouted his lips. Instead of being alone, he shouted at a guy who was coming towards him. Damn it, Cheese, why don't you kill them quickly? Hiss, he shook his tail in boredom. When his friends were still thinking about what Kinzu said, Cheese suddenly exerted force. Snap. A dull sound reminded Kinzu that Cheese's tail had succeeded. This was indeed the case. The unlucky reindeer was hit head-on by Cheese's thick tail and was directly chopped open by Kinzu. Ha ha, good job. Seeing Cheese's powerful performance, Kinzu couldn't help but laugh proudly. Cheese, white tiger, you guys quickly clean up these guys for me. Roar, 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 hiss, as if responding to Kinzu, two low voices sounded at the same time, making him, who was already excited, grinning to his ears. Cheese's sudden change of sides caught the big guys on the opposite side off guard. Especially when they saw the giant python that was almost 10 meters long, spitting out apricots and rushing towards them. The more timid beasts turned around and ran away. Hey, don't run, big guys, let's talk. Seeing these big guys turning around and wanting to run back, how could Kinzu let them do what they wanted so easily? On one hand, he signaled the two guys to chase behind, and on the other hand, he was still in contact with Aya. Yes, you saw this. That's great, did you see the guys who ran away? Just shoot. After finding the location for Aya, Kinzu was no longer in a hurry, and signaled his two friends to slow down to avoid being injured by mistake. Boom boom, with the low sound of the helicopter motor, a black hawk circled and flew over. Hey, here, damn, we're here. Ben Kaza thought someone had called the police, and when he saw the huge monster hovering in the sky, he couldn't wait to yell at it. Shut up, you shameless guy. Richard covered his forehead and cursed with some regret. That's Keen's private plane, where are your eyes? Did the dog eat them? Private. Being scolded by his elder brother, Ben Kaza instinctively shrank his neck and muttered with some dissatisfaction. How can I see what kind of plane it is? Anyway, there is a plane, we're safe. You, rolling his eyes, Richard thought it was better not to talk to this guy, otherwise he would be easily angry to death. Turning his head and ignoring Ben Kaza, Richard began to stare at the helicopter in the sky. He also wanted to know, why did Kinzu call the plane but not take them up? Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, a series of roars, mixed with the sound of countless bullets breaking through the air, scared Richard so much that his eyes almost fell out. Oh, God, this is a heavy machine gun. A heavy machine gun for aviation. Fuck, Clean, where did you get it? You must buy me one too. Yes, it's so cool. As if they felt that the danger had passed, several princes surrounded Kinzu and began to discuss the Black Hawk in the sky. How much did it cost? They didn't need to ask, because they knew where to buy it anyway. Where did you buy it? There was no need to ask, not to mention airplanes, they knew where to buy missiles. The only thing they wanted to ask was how this thing could fly freely over the border of the United States. Clean, you didn't modify it secretly yourself, did you? Richard's words swept away the noise in the field. Except for the sound of the heavy machine gun tearing oilcloth and the painful howling of the giant beasts, there was silence. Several princes stopped talking, staring at each other, and then looked at Qinzhou together, wanting to know if the truth was like this. Chapter 921 Richard's thoughts. How is it possible? Qinzhou shrugged and directly denied Richard's guess. Are you kidding? You want to modify weapons privately in the United States? And use them openly? Well, you can do it. But you have to think about the consequences. Then how did you do it? Jard also came over this time. He was also curious about this. Although his current identity, let alone getting a military helicopter to drive, even if he transferred a squadron to be a bodyguard, it would not be a problem. But that was after all with the help of his father-in-law's power. Therefore, Jard showed great interest in the Chinese who could be so arrogant in the United States. It's very simple. Shrugging, Qinzhou simply told the story again. He thought there was nothing to hide, anyway, they could find out at any time. Clean, I have to say, you're really this. Richard raised a thumbs up to Qinzhou and expressed his admiration. Being able to make such a decision in such weather is indeed rare in the American society where people are more selfish. Okay, let's not talk about this. Let's go see what's going on ahead, shall we? Waving his hand, Qinzhou smiled and changed the subject. How does the saying go? People with different ideologies cannot work together. If you are not on the same path, no matter what you say, he will not understand your intentions. After Qinzhou's reminder, the princes finally realized that they were still in danger. It seems that there is no sound. Ben Kaza looked around in confusion. He always felt that the silent atmosphere was a bit heavy. Is it intentional or too far? Qinzhou was not worried at all. He looked at the direction where the helicopter flew just now and said with a smile, "Why don't you wait here for a while, I'll go over and take a look." No. Waving his hand hurriedly, Ben Kaza explained with a dry laugh. If we want to go, let's go together. What's the point of waiting here by ourselves? Although he said it very righteously, Qinzhou could see from his shaking legs that he was not sincere. I guess this guy was worried that Qinzhou would abandon them, so he took the female bodyguard back by plane. With these young men and 2 bodyguards, if they encounter a monster like the one just now, they may not be able to return to the beautiful world. Clean, where did those big guys come from? Looking at the corpses of wild animals lying on the ground, Richard asked Qinzhou thoughtfully while walking. If there were no tools now, he would even want to carry all the corpses on the ground back and test them one by one. There was no way, everything seemed too magical. The 7 or 8 meter tall silverback gorilla, the 6 meter long clouded leopard, the beautiful reindeer, and the wild boar that didn't know whether to live or die. Everything clearly told these people with different thoughts. This forest is not simple. Who knows? Looking at the traces along the way, Qinzhou answered the prince's questions somewhat insincerely, and it seemed quite handy. Perhaps, this is also a kind of skill, right? After all, people who can lie openly need to have a strong mental endurance. Boss, there is a sound ahead. Dale's words interrupted the question that Richard was about to ask, and the atmosphere of this small team became tense again. Where? Qinzhou blinked in confusion, and listened carefully for a while, but still didn't find where the sound came from. It seems that I heard it wrong. Facing the puzzled eyes of several people, Dale shrugged calmly, with a look of indifference. In fact, she just couldn't stand these princes pestering Qinzhou to ask questions, and deliberately scare them. Touching his nose, Qinzhou looked at Dale strangely, thinking that the girl's expression was very problematic. But he never thought that Dale, who always showed a cold face, would come up with this method to help him. Don't say, although this method is a little bit damaging, it is very effective. Just looking at the suspicious expressions of the princes, Dale couldn't help wanting to laugh out loud. Boom boom, when the somewhat depressing atmosphere was about to solidify, the familiar roar finally came from the distant sky, which also made the princes breathe a sigh of relief. Clean, it seems that the situation is not bad. Listening to the roar that was getting closer and closer, looking at the beast corpses lying all over the road, Richard showed a faint smile on his face. He had already made up his mind that after going out, he would find some mercenaries to come and find out what was going on here. Yeah, it should be okay. Although he agreed with Richard's words, Qinzhou's expression was a little strange. because he and these guys had different focuses. Richard and the others only saw how many beast corpses were lying on the ground. But what Kinzu saw was that the corpses of these beasts were not so complete. How to say it? For example, the unfortunate reindeer in front of him, judging from its broken head, should have been shot directly in the head by the large caliber heavy machine gun on the helicopter. But what surprised Kinzu was that the reindeer that was shot in the head had a hole torn in its heart. It seemed that the internal organs had disappeared. Who did it? This question is obvious. It must have been done by those little guys who followed them. But why do they only eat these and not meat? Kinzu was puzzled. Is it because these things are more nutritious? By the way, Clean, I haven't asked you yet, is that golden snake also yours? Unexpectedly, Richard suddenly asked this question next to him. What? Kinzu was a little surprised. Isn't this obvious? It's not mine. Could it be that the enemy suddenly rebelled? No, I mean, is this also a beast you tamed? As if he didn't know how to express his thoughts, Richard stuttered a little when he spoke. Yeah, what's wrong? Although Richard didn't say it explicitly, Kinzu had seen through his thoughts and turned around to look at him with a fake smile. If this guy dared to say something that made him unhappy today, Kinzu didn't mind letting White Tiger and Cheese go on a killing spree. Anyway, so many people have been killed, so it doesn't matter if there are a few more humans with bad intentions. As for how to explain it when their family members come to find them later, it's easy to explain. It was just the beasts who did it. If you have the ability, go find those beasts yourself. Chapter 922 Testing and Making Friends. No, nothing. Richard laughed dryly twice, as if he had expected his own ending. He wisely changed the subject and praised. Clean, you're really amazing. Such a big hyphen is so obedient. Obedience? Really? Kinzu shrugged indifferently, grinned, but never mentioned the matter of obedience. Boss, Elsa is here. Seeing that Kinzu's expression was a little annoyed, Dale on the side reminded him at the right time. Oh, she's here. Looking up at the helicopter suspended in the air, Kinzu turned around and smiled at Richard. Your Highness, please go in, we should go back. Okay, in that case, let's go back first. He nodded with some disappointment, followed Kinzu, and walked towards the place where the helicopter landed. Fortunately, there had just been a big battle here, and some of the old trees around were almost destroyed, which made it possible for the helicopter to land well. Boss, are you okay? The hatch opened, and Aya, dressed in military uniform, jumped out of the cockpit, her eyes full of concern. Of course, how could I be okay? After laughing twice, Kinzu stepped forward and gave Aya a warm hug, praising her. Little Aya, you did a good job, and the boss's life was saved by you. No way. Aya struggled a little embarrassedly after being suddenly hugged by Kinzu in front of so many people. But, how could Kinzu let go of such a good opportunity? So although he clearly felt Aya's struggle, Kinzu pretended not to notice anything, and continued to talk about his gratitude. Ahem, Clean, should we go back? After a long time, the princes who were watching from the side finally couldn't help it, and weakly expressed their desire to return to a safe area. Oh, yes. Nodding, as if he had just reacted, Kinzu reluctantly let go of his big hand and said with a smile, it's time to go back early. Today is really a blessing. Indeed, Clean, we all owe you a life-saving grace. Nodding in agreement, Richard felt a little chilled when he thought that he wanted to get rid of several guys at the beginning. Not to mention whether he could survive facing those monsters after getting rid of a few people. Just say that Kinzu's wolf-like female bodyguards would probably beat him into a sieve. It's easy to know that they must have been following them from the beginning. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the other side to know the news immediately when something happened here. What's more terrifying is that this modified armed helicopter should have been cruising nearby. Thinking that he had to face a dozen fully armed female bodyguards and helicopters to hunt him down, even though Baldwin was a bit nervous, he felt that he had saved his life today. Okay, what's the matter with that? We're all friends, aren't we? Kinzu showed a brilliant smile and waved at the princes. Please go in, Your Highness, let's go back quickly. Of course, we're friends, haha. After laughing, Richard was not polite and took the lead toward to the helicopter. However, he was very dissatisfied with Kinzu's performance just now. Friends? Damn, you go hunting with your friends, and you have more than a dozen fully armed female bodyguards behind you. Kinzu certainly couldn't know Richard's thoughts, nor did he know that he misunderstood that he brought the female bodyguards with him from the beginning to guard against them. However, it didn't matter anymore. There was no way he could have any friendship with them anymore. How did the saying go? In the face of interests, even fathers and sons can turn against each other, let alone friends. What they want to compete now is to see who has the best luck and can get the biggest benefit in the shortest time. Clean, you are so lucky. As the helicopter slowly took off, Richard looked back at the large dense forest behind him and said meaningfully, "Really? I think so too." Coming back to his senses, looking at Richard's somewhat envious eyes, Kinzu decided to reveal something to him, so that this guy wouldn't think of himself as a big fat sheep. "Richard, do you think I got any benefits in there?" Pointing to the forest behind him, Kinzu smiled at Prince Richard, who looked a little stunned. No. With two embarrassed smiles, although he said no, Richard's expression was clearly nodding. "You must have gotten some benefits, otherwise how could you have such great skills?" "See, I know." Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu said indifferently, "But I want to make it clear that my ability to tame wild beasts comes from my hometown, that magical oriental country, not this unknown forest behind me." "What?" Kinzu's answer made Richard's expression a little dull. He never expected that Kinzu would bring up that topic so directly. What he didn't expect was that he thought he should have inherited the great druid, but this guy said he came from the mysterious east. "You don't believe it?" Seeing that Richard's expression was a little wrong, Kinzu shrugged helplessly. "You have to know, how long have I been in the United States? Even if I got the benefits, how could I become proficient so quickly?" "That's true." After pondering for a moment, Richard put away the somewhat false expression on his face and looked at Kinzu very seriously. "Clean, I'm sorry, it seems that I misunderstood before." "Ha, what's the matter?" After laughing twice, Kinzu waved his hand casually. "There is an old saying in our country, which is that it is better to resolve enemies than to make them. Since we have no conflict of interest, there is no need to be on guard against each other. Not only that, we can cooperate with each other, right?" With a bright smile on his face, Richard stretched out his big hand towards Kinzu. "Of course, happy cooperation." Although a little surprised, Kinzu quickly reacted and shook hands with this guy with a smile. No wonder this guy is so easy to talk to today. It turns out he was waiting for him here. Maybe he didn't believe Kinzu's words at all, but he had to act like this in order to be able to cooperate, right? After all, this is Kinzu's territory. Although he has many ways to force Kinzu to give up this land, Kinzu is not someone who can be easily messed with. In this way, this matter will spread in the upper circle, which is not a good thing for anyone. Chapter 923 Farewell to the Prince. "Honey, you guys are back. Are you okay?" Hearing the sound of the helicopter landing outside, Zumengyo couldn't stay in the room any longer, and rushed up after shaking off the two female bodyguards at the door. "Don't worry, how could I be in trouble?" Hugging the soft waist of the beautiful Zhu, sniffing the fragrance at the tip of his nose, Kinzu once again sighed that it was great to be alive. "You scared me to death. Tell me everything." Zumengyo pouted and glanced at the two female bodyguards who followed behind her. She said unhappily, "Leaving these two female bodyguards here to guard the door, they don't know anything. Eva and I worried to death. Okay, it's my fault. I won't do it again next time." Kinzu nodded to the two women who followed behind him, and a bright smile appeared on his face. He comforted them. "It's okay here. You can go down and rest. You've worked hard." "Ha, boss, this is our duty." She smiled and nodded, and looked at Zumengyo in Kinzu's arms with some envy. The two women turned around and went to meet up with Dale and the others. They didn't lie to Zumengyo because they really didn't know what happened. "Okay, wife, there are guests." After the two left, Kinzu lowered his head and leaned close to the ear of the beautiful lady Zhu, chuckled and said, "Don't wait for others to see the joke and say that we don't know how to entertain guests. Humph, I'll forgive you this time." After Kinzu said this, Zumengyo quickly struggled to stand up from his arms, and after giving this guy a coquettish look, she began to tidy up her clothes. "Ha, okay, wait until the evening, we will settle accounts with me." Kinzu said this in Zumengyo's ear with a sly smile. He didn't give her the opportunity to lose her temper, and said to the princes who slowly walked down the helicopter behind him, "Your Highnesses, I will have someone prepare dinner right away. How about we had dinner together later?" No, Clean, there is no need to be so polite." Richard smiled bitterly and waved his hand. The expression on his face was very tired. "We have already contacted them and we have to rush back to Abia overnight. A car will come to pick us up soon." "Ah, so urgent." Kinzu pretended to sigh with some regret and said hypocritically, You are too anxious. You don't even give me a chance to show my hospitality. If people know about this, they will say that I am stingy and don't even care about a meal. No, really not necessary. After 2 dry laughs, Ben Kaza also echoed beside him. Clean, we appreciate your kindness, but this meal is really unnecessary. The car that picks us up will be here soon. As he was talking, Richard's cell phone suddenly rang. He picked it up and said a few words, then hung up the phone with a smile. Clean, I'm really sorry. The convoy that picks us up is alright at the gate of the manor. Do you think you can send us out? Hey, let them come in directly. Kinzu looked at this guy in some confusion. They have already arrived at the gate, why don't you come in? And you want me to send you out? Boss, our door is closed. Dale seemed to have thought of something, and whispered in Kinzu's ear. The 2 people who opened the door have also been transferred by Elsa. Now there should be no one to open the door of the main door. Kinzu was sweating. How long has it been since this happened? Well, let's do this. With a smile, Kinzu looked at Dale beside him and ordered, Dale, go open the door. We have to let the guests in anyway. No, it's really not necessary. Richard was almost crying. Brother, can we not be so slow? I just want to go back to my own people now, take a good bath and have a good sleep in my luxurious RV. Okay, then. Kinzu smacked his lips and felt that it was about time, so he smiled and waved. Come on, Ween, drive the car out, and let's go and see the princes off together. Richard opened his mouth and wanted to say, why don't you just send us out by helicopter? But in the end, he didn't have the nerve to say it. Forget it, let's drive. Although it's slower, it's better than staying here. Soon, Knight the 15th was driven out by Ween and stopped beside the few people. Your Highness, please. Extending his hand and making a gesture of invitation, Kinzu smiled and watched the few people get in the car one by one, and then took Dale and Erica to get in. After the few people were ready, Ween started the car and rushed towards the gate. However, although it was said to be speeding, Richard always felt something strange. That is, the car was running, but the speed could not be increased. The journey that originally only took more than 10 minutes to drive to the gate was driven by Ween for half an hour. When Knight the 15th finally stopped at the gate, Richard almost knelt down to thank God. It's not easy. Your Highness, take care. Welcome to visit us often. Seeing the princes rushing out of the ranch gate impatiently, Kinzu stood behind and waved at them with a smile. Sure. Richard agreed from a distance, and got into the car no slower than his brothers. Before he sat down, Richard ordered Baldwin beside him. Contact Blackwater immediately. No, contact other mercenary groups. I need a few mercenary teams, and they must be well equipped. Yes, Your Highness. After agreeing neatly, Baldwin asked with some doubts. Your Highness, if you want to talk about well equipped, the first choice should be Blackwater, right? Are you stupid? Turning around, Richard looked at his personal bodyguard with some regret. What is the background of Blackwater? We are doing something on their territory, and you dare to invite them. But their reputation is very good. Baldwin retorted with some dissatisfaction. Ha, good reputation. Richard sneered twice and did not continue to explain. There is no need to explain so much when talking to your subordinates. Since I have given the order, no matter how many questions you have to keep them in your heart. You have to listen. Sure enough, after seeing that Richard had no intention of continuing to explain, Baldwin did not ask any more questions, but took out his mobile phone and started to contact. Boss, why did you let Ween drive so slowly? On the way back, rubbing her sore waist, Dale grumbled to Kinzu in dissatisfaction. It's a place that can be reached in a few minutes, but it took so long to drive. My waist is sore from sitting. Chapter 924. Meeting the gorilla again. Hehe, you don't understand this. Kinzu waved his hand, but he didn't mean to explain. He leaned back on the seat and closed his eyes. Dale curled her lips when she saw this. Although she didn't know what Kinzu was doing, she still signaled Ween to slow down the car. Kinzu closed his eyes and did not do anything else. Instead, he shifted his thoughts to Cheese. Although they came out, Cheese and the white tiger were left in the forest by Kinzu. After opening his eyes, Kinzu raised his big head, looked around, confirmed his position, and then headed towards the destination. Roar! Seeing Cheese move, the white tiger standing next to him also stood up, wagging his thick tail, and followed him leisurely. Only now did it know that its owner actually had such a powerful pet. Yes, very powerful. Although the white tiger was proud enough and its body length was nearly 10 meters, it really didn't have much confidence compared to Cheese. It was nothing else, just the instinct of animals. Being with this guy, it instinctively felt the danger of its life. Fortunately, this guy is in the same group with him. Glancing at the slowly sliding Cheese, the white tiger secretly felt fortunate. Hiss, seeing the guy behind him looking a little careless, Kinzu couldn't help but stop and roared at him twice. Although he didn't know what the situation in the forest was like now, he was sure that it was definitely not that safe. If a boat capsized in the ditch, it would be a big joke. Roar! After responding in a low voice, the white tiger said that he understood it, and then he cheered up and walked forward while looking around. However, Kinzu's heart ached a little as he walked in. Damn, I forgot something important. Looking at the animal corpses that were scrambled by some small beasts and wild birds, Kinzu regretted it so much that his intestines almost turned green. It doesn't need to be thought about, and you know that the meat of these animals must contain a lot of nutrients. Otherwise, those picky eaters wouldn't rush in so hastily. If they could thicken the meat, they could sell it if they didn't eat it. But now, it was too late to say anything. Because within his sight, the bodies of several giant beasts had been almost eaten by wild beasts. In order to fight for these bodies, several big guys with hot tempers even staged a fight. For a moment, the scene fell into extreme chaos. Roar, roar, roar! The white tiger, who received Kinzu's signal, jumped over from dozens of meters away and roared a few times at the group of guys who were still fighting. In an instant, the chaotic scene was quiet, and all the big and small beasts were instantly in a state of confusion. Ha ha ha, you guys dared to steal my things? The satisfied Kinzu twisted his huge body and deliberately slid past several guys. Shaking his big head, the white tiger looked at the friends who could compete with him a few months ago, but were now scared by his shout. It would be nonsense to say that he didn't feel proud. But the most important purpose now is to explore the depths of the forest, isn't it? Fortunately, Kinzu didn't have a purpose for this visit. After teaching these guys a lesson, he took the white tiger and continued to walk forward. However, Kinzu, who hadn't walked a few steps, suddenly stopped in front of a bush, raised his head and roared at the bush in front. Hiss! The white tiger following closely also found something wrong at this time. He opened his big mouth and a transparent bow wave shot directly over. Roar, roar, roar! Under the watchful eyes of Kinzu and the other two, oh no, it should be said that the two beasts, the bush in front was smashed by the white tiger's big move, and a painful beast roar came over. Sure enough, Kinzu pouted, shook his huge body, and rushed in with a catapult. There was no way. With his current physical strength, he was not afraid of these little guys. However, to Kinzu's surprise, the big guy hiding in the bushes and being affected by the white tiger's ultimate move was none other than the muscular silverback gorilla. Hiss! Kinzu spit out apricots in a strange way. He wanted to ask, why haven't you died yet? He was bombarded by cannons so many times and was suppressed by heavy machine guns. The others were almost dead. How come this guy is still fine? No, it can't be said to be fine. Because under Kinzu's gaze, this silverback gorilla was already breathing in more than breathing out, and it was about to die. Roar! With a low roar, the white tiger came to the front and raised its claws to give this guy a good beating. It didn't have a good impression of this thick-skinned and warlike guy. After all, if it hadn't evolved quickly, its master would probably have been killed by it. But what surprised Bear was that the giant python in front of him actually stopped his action. Roar! With a puzzled roar, Bear still retracted his claws, although he was a little puzzled. He had not forgotten the master's teachings, that family members should unite. Moreover, he could clearly feel the master's breath on this guy, which meant that this guy was more favored than himself. After subconsciously stopping Bear, Kinzu was also a little troubled. Just now he really just subconsciously stopped it. If Bear insisted on killing it, he would not say anything. But why is this guy so obedient? Now Kinzu himself was a little embarrassed. Kill it. I just stopped Bear, it would be a bit unkind to kill it myself. Don't kill it. Should I save this guy? Saving him is not bad. Thinking of the domineering look of this guy when he resisted the bullet, Kinzu's eyes lit up. Roar, roar! The white tiger, who was staring at Kinzu in confusion, was startled by the flash of light in its eyes. It subconsciously took a few steps back and subconsciously clamped its thighs together. Coward, I'm not interested in you, what are you afraid of? Staring at the guy speechlessly, Kinzu looked at the big guy who occupied almost a patch of grass even when lying on the ground. He felt a little itchy and a little worried. because at this time, he suddenly thought of several Hollywood blockbusters he had watched before. That's right, it was War for the Planet of the Apes and King Kong. Thinking about the situations in those movies, Kinzu couldn't help but hesitate again. In the end, will he be unable to control this guy? It should, maybe, definitely not, right? Chapter 925. Not convinced? I'll beat you until you submit. System, you should be able to control the situation, right? Kinzu, who was a little lacking in confidence, subconsciously wanted to ask the system for help. However, he was obviously going to be disappointed. How could the system pay attention to him? It's not that this question is difficult to answer, but because this question is too easy to answer, the simple system doesn't want to pay attention to him. Ahem, since you don't say anything, it means you can handle it, then I'm relieved. As if talking to himself, Kinzu said a few words, then opened the system and called up the pet page. Fortunately, the system is integrated with his consciousness. As long as his consciousness is still there, he can open the system no matter where he is. Otherwise, even if he wants to save people, he will be unable to do it. Tes hand bless, success in one go. Seeing that the big guy was about to die, Kinzu couldn't help but start praying nervously. Ding dong, capture failed. Looking at the light circle that was bounced back, Kinzu was furious. Is this what you fear? But time didn't allow him to continue to dawdle. If it didn't work once, then try it twice. There would always be a time when he would succeed. But things don't always go as expected. Seeing that this guy was about to die, he still held his head high and looked at Kinzu with a disdainful look, as if to say, I'd rather die than obey. I don't deal with you, but you are still getting ahead of me, right? Kinzu was a little angry, so he simply turned off the pet system. The gorilla was a little stunned. Didn't he want to subdue him just now? Why didn't he make any noise? Just when the white tiger was a little puzzled, Kinzu opened his terrifying big mouth and bit the gorilla directly. Pouting, the white tiger squatted down a little bored. Since you want to kill it, why not just leave it to me? Why bother so much? However, just when Bearyu thought that the gorilla was doomed, he saw a burst of green light suddenly emerge from Kinzu's big mouth, and gradually spread to the gorilla's whole body. Roar, as if it was suddenly reborn, the big guy who was dying just now suddenly sat up straight, staggering and trying to stand up. Is it saved? Blinking his big eyes, Bearyu was a little surprised. He didn't expect that this big guy could treat injuries. It seems that we have to get along well in the future. After all, everyone gets hurt sometimes, right? Bearyu was looking at Kinzu with some boredom, but his mouth opened wider and wider. Suddenly, it shuddered and threw away the idea of making friends with this python in its mind. It turned out that Kinzu fed the gorilla a few drops of spiritual liquid to pull it back from the brink of death. Before it could stand up, he whipped it with his tail. Snap. 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 I told you to look at me, I told you to look at me with that look. Kinzu was still cursing while whipping the gorilla with his thick tail. Roar, roar, the gorilla, who was suddenly attacked, was confused about the current situation. Didn't you just save me? But it was useless to say anything now. Kinzu didn't give it a chance to resist. The gorilla, who had just sat up, was beaten to pieces by his tail. It looked worse than before. Little guy, do you obey? Kinzu, who was a little tired at beating, put away his big tail, shook his head and moved closer to the gorilla, staring at his eyes closely. Blinking, the gorilla wanted to retreat in fear. It was really afraid of the madman in front of it. Okay, you still don't obey, right? Then let's do it again. In the gorilla's helpless eyes, Kinzu opened his big mouth again and bit it. Crackling. After repeating the process just now, Kinzu once again thrust the snake head forward. How is it? Are you convinced? This time the gorilla learned to be smart. Although it didn't understand what Kinzu was yelling, it still nodded its head hurriedly. HMPH, you know what's good for you. Kinzu exhaled and grinned. Beating people is really a strenuous job. However, the harvest is still very good. Glancing at the gorilla next to him who looked a little miserable, Kinzu curled his lips. It would have been better if it had been done earlier. It would have saved me the effort. He opened the pet system again and threw a capture spell directly over. Seeing that the guy still hit some resistance, Kinzu glared at him and his tail stood up directly. Roar, roar, faced with this naked threat, the gorilla lowered its head helplessly. It was also afraid of being beaten. The feeling of being almost dead, but coming back to life in the blink of an eye, and then being beaten to death again, is really not something that an animal can bear. Besides, in the world of beasts, the strong are the kings, and it has no other good solutions now. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully capturing the silverback gorilla mutation. The mechanical prompt sound of the system came as expected, and it sounded so wonderful to Kinzu at this moment. Silverback gorilla mutation is an Earth species that has been stimulated by some mysterious power and has stimulated its evolutionary instinct. Level: Spirit Beast, Fake, Skills: Unawakened Talent. Stone Skin Spirit Beast, Fake. Looking at the conspicuous word fake in the gorilla's attributes, Kinzu was a little puzzled. Could it be that there are fake spirit beasts? Beasts that have not successfully opened the spiritual awakening skill, but whose physical fitness has reached the level of spirit beasts, are usually called pseudo-spirit beasts. The system explained lightly. For example? Kinzu asked very curiously. For example, the giant pythons in the Amazon jungle, and the deep-sea monsters in the sea. Ah, okay, I think I understand. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu stopped dwelling on this question. After turning off the system, he looked at the gorilla in front of him, who had become very obedient, and a strange arc appeared at the corner of his mouth. Big guy, hurry up, take us to your lair. After hearing Kinzu's words, without the slightest hesitation, the silverback gorilla stood up from the ground, tidied up its messy hair, and took Kinzu and the other beasts with him, striding forward. High, really high. Although he couldn't speak, Bear still wanted to give a thumbs up to the big python in front of him. So this is how you can subdue a little brother. It seems that I have to try it in the future. Not only can it lead the way for me, but it can also show off when I take it out. Although he was thinking about it in his mind, Bear's speed was not slow, and he caught up with Kinzu at a trot. He has made up his mind that as long as his master is not around, he will follow this python. Being with him is really a great experience. Fin est capture much as great as Pelaga has to el final. No se olviden de dull like busgasms contenido exclusivo y exeo inmediato. Si escribita news patreon. Recuerda, cada like, si escribes no dona que nos anima a continuar. Great as a todos nos vemos en el próximo video.